be back in a second.
So let's see. It should be on at this point.
Okay.
So,
Sure. I'll just say if you don't see us, yeah. So we were just talking about NPCs, and oh yeah, something funny I found of NPCs is that the players will sometimes pick up on the weirdest things, like the real dead ends of NPCs. You know what I mean? Like the oh god, this person NPC can actually sometimes become really like important to that player or that character. One example I had of that was in Numenera Enter the Ninth World. The character of Naomi was like a throwaway name and character idea which Mitch had, and then she became actually really important to the story. And at the end of that season, spoiler alert, she like became Enrias the harpy goddess and like ascended into the sky, and now she's the villain of like season 3. It looks like.
Nice.
It was literally like me getting interested in like the fact that there was some like quiet, odd kind of girl around here, and my character was like happened to end up protecting her, and then suddenly she's off. So like be prepared for like sometimes players will just want to roll with something, and you can just run with it, even if you've got nothing there. I think it's always funny when that happens, and I've done it before, and players like do that as well. Just all the times, like picking up on things that you didn't suspect that they might pick up on or start running with.
yeah. And the biggest thing is that the players always find ways to kind of make your adventure not go the way you planned it. If you want the players to go to the town first, they will walk everywhere but to the town. They will walk into this forest and will walk. So keep in mind that it's always nice to have a couple of NPCs already written down. Not so much like a whole page, but maybe a couple of lines so you can throw them at them, a tavern in the forest, whatever. So you have names. Names in general is good to have a stockpile of that suits the campaign era.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to do that now.
Yeah.
It's been all improv, so.
yeah. That's cool. With what were we talking here? We're talking about making a memorable. Like I say, guys, your questions in chat, we'll get them in the Q&A section at the end of the last hour. So in an hour and a half, we'll get to all your questions and try and answer them together as thoroughly as we can. But on the topic of talking about our NPCs to try and stick on a topic and not jump around the place here. But eventually as well, we could, or I could challenge the entire bar to wrestling. Yeah, exactly. They'll go off of track sometimes. But on that point as well, sometimes sometimes it is fine to just reel them in when it comes to that. Not every NPC that you have is going to be interesting. Some people are just pretty boring. And so not every NPC can be like brought into like this whole like, oh, and this guy's got this fascinating backstory as well, because it just becomes like a bit odd at that point that Joe the peasant has all this rich backstory, and all this. He's actually a special snowflake as well,
Yeah, I've only got 3 hours to prep, so.
Exactly, yeah. And the other thing is you don't want to over prep. Like you want to be like pretty careful with how much time you like sink into like just NPCs, because you got to think about like the rest of your story. You got to think about balancing encounters, about how much are they going to level up the session, and a million other questions which you have to answer to DM. So not DMing, not focusing too much on the NPCs can be a way of kind of cookie cuttering, kind of shortcutting your way out for that, and having a kind of cookie cutter word banks of ideas and some sentences about who they might be is a good way to kind of get yourself around having to sit down and think about, write out 20 different individual NPCs and all they do. I know some people that do that, but I don't think they love themselves. So I would just save yourself as much time as possible.
Yeah.
Let's see. You had another topic that we want to talk about. We've been talking about that for half an hour now. So there's another question.
I don't know. That's pretty
funny. There was like 3 different points I remember, and the second one was something to do with voices.
Yeah, my voice works kind of weak. I usually do things like to change the cadence and stuff, but I don't know. I was wondering if you had any advice on what to do, how to make your voice more distinct per
Yeah.
character.
Yeah. What would you say, Skagif, as a fellow deep-voiced man?
Yes, hello. I would say that if you feel that you cannot perform a specific voice, if it may be like a female voice or very dark voice or something, you could kind of emphasize it when you are addressing the players, like this. This Smith or whatever has this really dark voice and you're feeling whatever. So you could emphasize and you can really bring it up into the play if you don't want to kind of do a specific accent or something like that. But you can try it out to see if a certain way to talk could maybe go that route. A little bit slower, a little bit more thinking about the words and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Trying it out.
phrasing can be powerful.
Yeah.
Like the actual words that you say can be.
Yeah, if you think about it, some of the voices that you see on streams, or try to look up the voice acting, the people that do voice acting. Certain voices they do aren't that similar regarding how they do it. It's more phrasing it and how you kind of, here I push a little bit of a pause. So it kind of goes a little bit slower and it kind of feels it drags out. That could be kind of fun too.
Yeah, right now most of my players don't have cameras, and before when we meet face to face, I'd make up a lot of the difference with facial expressions and body language.
Yeah, that's
Now it's all tone and cadence, and it's kind of new.
yeah, that's difficult to do when you can't. We were talking about that yesterday as well, like how in real life as a DM, I'm much more kind of physical with like you can get up and players' faces, you can walk around, you do just postures, everything.
Yeah.
Whereas with like a camera online, you don't get that same kind of essence. And I think, Skaggy was saying his pauses, and I think like the power of silence can be a much overlooked thing, because when it comes to, when it comes to like a really badass, like boss fight, they're not usually people who like will talk a lot and explain everything about their like evil plan. Sometimes just like a few words, like well spaced out, can be a bit more menacing or intimidating than trying to spew out everything as well. And one thing which, if you are the kind of person who will be someone like a rogue rabbit, welcome rogue rabbit to the adventure. You are a gentle rabbit and a scholar. Thanks for joining us, my friend. But if you are are you kind of DM who might like write down like exact lines that people might say, like reading out like box text, for instance, or writing the badass monologue or something like that?
No, usually I just improvise, and I've had a lot of practice at it, and I'm fairly quick-witted to begin with, so I've just kind of gone with that so far.
Yeah. I think, and it's also for both ways. Sometimes I find I need to like slow down when I'm speaking, believe it or not, guys. But sometimes when you are trying to be someone else's voice, they don't speak as we might. I like slowly and with like a lot of pauses, or like very quickly, and so like pace of how you say something can be everything as well in like a phrase or sentence, because saying something like welcome to my crypt is a lot different from saying welcome to my crypt, and like the speed at which you say it and like the like kind of tone in which you throw into that sentence. If I am playing the scary evil sorcerer, I might be a lot slower. Whereas if I'm playing the gnome, I'll be really quick, and I'm trying to get everything out as quickly as possible out of my mouth. I can't say anything quick enough. And so, injecting pace into sentences can be something that I use. And that's something that you might not even like actively think about, but already do. But like sometimes I force myself to actively think about these things, and then I do them more. Because here's the thing, right? Me and Scav can sit here and like talk for hours about like things which like can be done and should be done, but like the times which we implement them aren't like 100% of the time. We're not always doing the things that we should be doing. or none of us are as DMs, you know. And so
I
things that I do to like make myself do these good practices, or I'll just write them down on like a sticky note. If I'm in a real life game, or on a computer, I just throw a sticky note onto my screen. Do this, or just a
Sticky
side note on
notes.
my yeah, just a side note on the on my notes, just to say like in brackets like quick voice, or shout or something like that, you know, because those cues are something that get lost when you're in the moment, right? And you know, there's a case to be said that no one actually ends up reading their notes once they're going, and they're only there for like you know, brief references. But just a brief like word or something like that can just be like a trigger for your brain to do something. And so writing a sentence down, and that's more about like note taking form in general, but you know, if you write a long sentence down, like I need to speak like this in this kind of voice with this sort of that cadence. But if you just wrote down like quick, all in caps, and like slam it into your brain, and then sometimes that can just help when you're like quickly referencing a character, I find. Because otherwise I just forget things, you know. I'm just an idiot,
Yeah,
and then I'm
I do a lot of post-it notes on the bottom of my screen and on the sides of the screen, and
Yeah.
on those I kind of write really small. Think like a goblin, talk like a goblin, be a character that is kind of after the gold, whatever. And it doesn't really matter, or it doesn't really need to be that exactly how it will act out, but it kind of triggers my mind. Oh, right. It's a golem kind of thing, because that is how my mind works. And the words that I implement on the notes could be something that triggers my imagination to what I want to say or how I want to say it. So small notes kind of tick them off from the screen and kind of, yeah, this is how he's gonna talk and act. So yeah, small notes is pretty good.
Okay, great.
Yeah, just because otherwise, like, you know, I get carried away in the moment, and I will improv, you know, pretty much anything that I do. And I realize I've noticed something recently with like, I generally put in like a very small amount of prep into games, and I just run a lot of improv stuff. And that works quite well for me. But I noticed on the Curse of Strahd series, where I put in 3 hours of prep because it's on stream, like I think like the quality of my game is much higher in that one, or it's just a different style of game, right? It's just a different style, and it's interesting to see how just like taking that extra like 10-20 minutes just to write that down can actually just make me remember to do things, because like writing something makes me remember it. There's like some statistic, like if you write something down, if you say it out loud, if you like have a smell associated to it, you're like x many percentage more likely to remember that thing when you are trying to think back on it. So you know, it's like maths or science or some shit, I don't know.
So what
Given
you
a Borderlands
basically
test,
are
though,
saying is that if you study before a test, you could actually
yeah,
make it.
apparently so, but I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know, Skag. If I dropped out of school to play D&D all day, mate. So
Look at me now.
don't listen to me on that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I know
But,
what you're saying. I've been writing down
yeah,
all the players' skills, and I found that I've been able to include everybody more equally, give them each more spotlight,
yeah.
and that
That's
just that writing has helped a lot.
Yeah. In fact, and this is something which has made me think as well. Galushi said in chat, I use physicality even on audio only just because it helps me get into character. Yeah, I think I do the same, perhaps even without noticing. When I'm like, and even if you're on, especially if you're on camera, like, example of this is Askren on the Thursday game. When he like played a character, he always had this ring, just like a thing which he used to like put on. And when he was wearing that ring, he knew he was that character. And he would like act as that character, like physically as well as like in speech and stuff. And whenever he wasn't in the character, he'd just take the ring off. And so a little like item or a little thing which you have just to like make you that character, that could help as well. Or just like a stance you assume when you are that character. So when I play Boris, the mutant child on the Curse of Strahd, I hunch over and I constantly lick my lips. No matter what I'm doing, I'm Boris now, you know. And then when I like say, okay, I'll step out of that pose, but like whilst I'm there, as long as I'm in the scene, I hunch, you know, and I hadn't really thought about that before. But that's something you could do, like a stance or just a way you sit. Or like something I found as well when I was doing this in real life the other day. There was a character who's really, really fat, and he'd like sit back in his chair like this. And whenever I play him, we do it over voice and video now. I always make sure I take these long sips from my cup. And he really like takes a long time doing something, just like act it out, and then he puts the cup back down again. It takes a long time. And so like just living will is the stuff of nightmares. Yeah. If you donate, there's a wonderful gift of me doing it. Honestly, it's great. But yeah, just like physical stuff that you can actually just do, rather than saying like he does this, because you're on video and people will see that, especially if it's like up here, I guess. Then that can
Yeah, remember
down there they might no more know.
the deeper voice of Reinhardt Decker in the 40K.
Yeah.
I prepped the voice for the name several times. So whenever I had the problem of how did I do the voice, I kind of remember just say his name as he would have said his name, and it kind of starts it up like, I am Reinhardt Decker. And it kind of goes from there.
Yeah, there are trigger words for accents and voices if we start talking about that. But if you look up on YouTube, and I have seen a bunch of these, there are certain words which are very easily trigger you into an accent. You can look at some really good, useful guides to doing them, and they'll kind of say you words, and you can like say it back and stuff like that. But there are some certain words in different accents which just like get you into that one more easily than others. And if you end up looking up those, like write down that word if you're going to try and do the accent, and then say that word.
Put it in a sentence.
Put it in a sentence, maybe, because that can help you. Accents are a tricky one, because people you'll either love them or you'll kind of fear them, or you might be able to do one or like maybe two, kind of like slightly different voices. But I think accents aren't really everything, because I know a bunch of people who do really good DMing and they don't do any really different voices. You know, they do different like tones and intonations, but they don't end up really using a different part of their like voice box or accent or anything like that. But here's the thing. So like Skagif was saying there, like different parts, like speaking is a really like a bodily thing. Like it can come from different like places in you. So when you do like acting, like the pose in the stance that you're in, like accesses different parts of like you breathe differently and accesses different parts of like your bodice, right? And so when I am hunched over like this, it's much more easy to go high, because I'm actually like sucking in like my chest a little bit when I'm like hunched over like this, and my voice is just much easier to get here. Whereas when I'm like puffing out my chest, it's a much more powerful kind of sound which comes out. And so stance is important for like showing that kind of character as well. But as well as like vocally, you can just get different sounds coming out of your body when you're in different like poses. Because like if you are lying on the ground like flat, your voice is much weaker than if you're standing up, and that's because you just can't like breathe properly. You're at like a weird kind of breathing kind of angle and stuff. So like the way in which your body is sitting is actually pretty important. So if you're like slouched back, usually when you're DMing, like, you know, try sitting up a bit maybe, and you might become a bit more energetic. It might help you get into a more kind of energetic character, or more powerful or confident character. It's way easier to become DJ Phylactery. I mean, with DJ Phylactery, you just got to dance. You just got to, you know, get into the hip hop. And I need my hype man for DJ Phylactery, obviously. But yeah, there's that's an idea for voices. In terms of like actually learning accents, I can't like teach you any accents or anything. But other than just say like, you know, look up some YouTube videos and some guides onto doing them. Because they're pretty easy to do after a while. Take a bit of practice, and you can spend weeks and weeks learning different accents. I actually know Virgil, the DM, who actually couldn't make it last night because his router blew up. But he was saying he tries to learn a different accent every month. Obviously, he's a pretty accomplished actor and voice actor. But he kind of sets himself a challenge every month to learn a different accent. And obviously, you're not going to look up some YouTube videos and suddenly be able to do this amazing Irish, Scottish, Welsh, different accents and stuff like that. it's definitely a kind of like learning process, but you can like force yourself to learn them. And then your body will end up learning them. It's a bit like a muscle memory kind of thing. Like the more you do it, the better you can get at doing them. And sometimes, here's another thing, like bad accents can be hilariously good at a table. I love hearing bad accents. But best part of my day really is when someone comes in with like a truly horrific accent. I'm like, this is just great. And so like, don't be afraid to like cock it up with an accent, because it's always good fun. Also, like for like Americans, because like America is such like a. And here's the thing: I can't do. I can't really do different regions of America very well because I just don't know it well enough. And Americans don't hear like English and Scottish and Welsh and like the traditional kind of fantasy ones, like the kind of Middle East, Eastern Europe and Western Europe as well, kind of voices as much as they hear like American accents. And so you could just do a different part of America. You go for like a Southern accent or go for a New York accent because you're probably much more familiar with hearing them. And therefore, you're much better at mirroring those kind of accents. Because I've seen some truly horrendously bad and hilariously funny Americans trying to do English accents, and that's my favorite thing. But if you don't want to be called out by your players too much, then there is a way to do that. There, give dwarves gravelly soft voices, give elves Scottish rough voices. Yeah, that's a way to mess with your players. So, Skag, have you got anything to add on to that one here?
No, I think we practically took them all. I really liked Matt Mercer's one he did on Critical Role. He had one character that was a monster of some sort, and he talked continuously. He breathed in, and as he exhaled, his voice practically was ongoing. So he has this hissing sound to the voice he made. It was really strange and really cool at the same time. So there are other ways to actually do the voices, not just the accents. There are other ways to kind of push it up and down and trying different levels with the voice and see where the deepness, how far down your throat you can go with the voice. And if the person could talk a little bit higher up, I don't know, the nasal, I think they don't call it. The people have a very high pitched sound. So you could try it out, different voices, different levels with it.
Yeah. Can any of our present DMs do a Sean Connery? I'm a very bad Sean Connery, unfortunately. Josh just ends up doing Sean Connery when he's drunk. What does Sean Connery say? Oh, you got to say short. You got to say Schward when you say Sean Schward. That's it. Oh wait, no. Illumination is another one. That's another trigger for Sean Connery for me. At the end of Indiana Jones, and he's like, "What did you find, Dad?" And he's like, "Illumination." That always gets me. That always gets me a bit, Sean. For Scottish, I just say Scotland. That gets me into to Scottish. Or beer, brew. Usually, like R rollings, brew gets me into like a Scottish, like a some kind of rolling R tends to get me in there for some reason. That's a filthy good. I can't do a Swedish very well. I can't do a Swedish accent. Can you do an English accent, Skagger?
No.
No, I don't think I can do a Swedish really either. But
English? Is that the all right, Kavna? Is it the trigger for it?
All right, Kavna.
All right, Kavna.
Here's another thing. So not all like drinkers are to get into Scottish. True. Not all NPCs that you're going to be playing are going to be human or like elven or dwarvish or whatever, like considered like normal races. Like monster voices are something, is like a completely different like side of the spectrum for that, because you're not trying to imitate anything which is in modern day like usage, right? You know, there's no one actually speaks like a lich might speak or like a troll might really speak. And so that's a weird one because you don't have so much to go on. And Rogue Rabbit is Swedish. There you go. But there, For that, what I do is I just like copy a voice that I've heard on like a film, or like in an audiobook or something I've heard before, and like try and imitate that badly. And you can do the same thing with normal accents as well. So Mythmatic always tells us whenever he's trying to get a new accent, he does a bad impersonation of a celebrity, because everyone can do like a bad celebrity voice, so of one kind or another. You know, usually someone can do like a weird celebrity for some reason. They can get a little bit like them, or I really like them, and so using that impersonation and just use it into a character, and then suddenly like they've got a lot more life to them, because you know, maybe you can do an Elvis you know, impression, and then suddenly like you've got a really interesting weird character just coming from the voice, because you know, what if, you know, someone like Elvis existed in D&D, what would that be like? Is he some kind of bard? You know, suddenly we've got all these different ideas, and then that can come like a lot of jokes can spring from some bad some bad impersonations rather. So I don't want to do too much Q&A here, seeing as a Q&A session is going to be in just over an hour here. So save some of your questions. I'll try to get to a few of them whilst we're going through here to kind of spring off of what we're saying. What's my go-to evil voice? What's my go-to good voice? What's Western accents like, or like a country accents? I'm not very good at a country, I don't think. No, not at all. But what's a go-to accent, which is a point where we can spring off of, like having like a go-to voice for an NPC, or a go-to kind of personality for like a random NPC that you might run into, because they're kind of useful to have like kind of built up in a kind of like memory bank, I suppose. So Skag, what would you say your like go-to bad guy voice would be? Kind of a bit darker, a bit lower,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. I had one in the previous horror games I ran. Will be one coming up this next week, where I went a little bit lower, not really as low as Reinhardt, but a little bit lower, and I kind of emphasized to be really, really slow. So he talked very, very long pauses. And you felt like, yeah, come on with it. What is the key for what we're supposed to do? Yeah,
Yeah.
and you are so close.
That's cool. Yeah, I
So
think like my go-to bad is like I am medieval person. Yeah, that kind of it's basically Moldog, you know, Moldog. He's actually Moldog's a bit more ridiculous. But yeah, some kind of my go-to good guy is like I'm a gruff guard. I'm here just to do my job. And he's like, I guess like slightly London way, English accent, I suppose. Look, I'm just trying to do my job here. Will you get out of my way? That sort of voice. What was I saw a question or a comment here which made me laugh earlier. Lich equals speaking with a lollipop in your mouth stuffed in your cheek. Cockney's a fun accent to get into. Cool, blimey, Gavner. But yeah, having that kind of like fallback sort of voice that you can just go. Maybe you just have like one voice that you can end up doing, or like one accent which you can kind of do like okay, because that's all you really need. Like all you really need is enough to set them apart from someone else, right? If they're an important NPC, so that all your NPCs don't sound the same, because you don't want like your badass, you know, your big bad evil guy to sound exactly like the young child who you just saved from that cave, right? You don't want it to be like, you don't want a PC to be like, oh, I kill him, and you're like, well, why are you killing him? Like he's like the child, you know. So you want to have like some distinction through doing different stuff like. I never started that, but I like the thing about timing. The other thing I did for bad guys sometime, and for particularly like a female villain, well, not necessarily a villain, but she's certainly like not a good person. She's like she's famine itself, and she is my kind of go-to like female kind of villainous voice, and something I found. When playing those kind of characters is to have them be quite forward, or to have them be quite simple, because the one thing I found of villains, and this is about like creating NPCs as well as just like voice acting them, is sometimes with villains it can get to this thing where it's like they're very mysterious and they never really say anything of much importance. They're just talking and being slightly evil, but never really doing anything or saying anything of really much import. Whereas a character who's just very kind of straightforward and down the line as a villain can be a bit of a fresh air, I think, because this character I play, she's just straight to the point, and so they ask her something like, "So what are you going to do when we go to Ravenloft to attack Strahd?" And she says, I'm going to take over the town. I'm going to take over the world. I'm going to devour everyone's souls. And that's what I want to do because I'm really hungry. I'm famine itself.
Question.
And so she's just a very kind of abrupt and straightforward kind of villain, which is a little bit different to the usual kind of James Bond style of villain, is what I'd call them. Those kind of 70s to 80s kind of villains who are like, Mr. Bond, I have been expecting you. Here is my evil plan, and they're just very like traditional villains. And going is again making them quirky, going against the grain with villains is making them almost like not villains, is kind of making them just like normal people who are just doing bad things. And that can be fun, I found, because it can kind of make the players think twice about whether or not they're really a villain or like a big bad evil guy or like a bad character.
There was one villain that I did back in the days that the only note I made on the sheet was throw back at the players. So whenever I found myself being in a corner where they were having such a good argument or good questions or whatever, and I felt that the villain maybe was really on the shit there, I just turned it around to the players. So they might have been going for, oh, you will just do this and this, you are so bad and bad. And then he would just turn it around and go, how about you? You did all this, you killed that guy, you killed a guard, don't he has a family? And just ramble around and just pinch hole through what they've done in the course of their adventure. Meaning they will be like, oh shit, what the hell? And then I have a little breathing room to go like, shit, I'm in a panic mode now. They're getting too good for me. And from there I could go for another turn in the conversations.
Okay, yeah. I don't know the Noisy Person card game, but if you want to link it, Bo Muse, then go ahead. This is a good question from Belgraph, and I think it's worth touching on for Jay here as well, seeing as we're talking about different voices and how to make them stand out or a bit different. How strong do you feel on being able to do like female voices? Because I found for me that was a thing for a long time, which I really struggled with doing without making them like ridiculous and like, oh, I'm such a girl, because people in females in the world are meant to be like cool and badass as well. How do you feel? What do you think about that differentiation at the moment?
Me, female voices are really tough. I mean, my voice being kind of deep, but a lot of the players will tease and make fun and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
But like you, it's like females are badass too, so I don't want to be too frilly, I guess.
Yeah. You don't want to go down the other end of the scale. You want to take a bio break here? Go ahead, dude. And we'll
right.
No worries. But I'll talk to we'll talk about that in a moment here. But you tend to use regional accents. You were saying there. Yeah, I think that's true. Ray's saying, "Wow, something already! Didn't you just finish a 24-hour D&D stream?" Yeah, we finished at 7 a.m. this morning. We started streaming at 1 p.m. today. And we've been streaming ever since, so it's been a lot of fun. So we've had a 30-hour work weekend, which isn't most people's idea of a fun weekend, but it's been great fun for me. Weirdly, I found doing a Yorkshire accent hard over 5 minutes. That's weird. Most of my female voice actually sounds like female badass, as I suck at giving them a frilly voice. That's funny. Or any Aussie doing a Mad Max, you want to get out here, talk to me type accent. Yeah, I found the Mad Max accent's really cool actually in that film. Like they kind of created their own like dialects almost in that film. It was a very kind of odd way which they spoke in, and they didn't use speech that much either in that film, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, certainly
A little bit more growling.
Yeah, a little bit more gravelly. Yeah. Also, seeing as it's on the hour, we've been going here for 4 hours thus far today, as well as a 24-hour yesterday. If you are new to the stream, do hit that follow button and join us. We're here all the time. We're answering your guys' questions, and we're in Dungeon Master's lessons right now, trying to help Jay Snide with his questions. So feel free to help him with any advice that you can give him. We'll be reading out your questions. We're doing a Q&A in 1 hour here. So if you have an in-depth question that you want answered by us, then we'll be answering that properly in 1 hour. Of course, if you're new, like I said, hit that follow button, join us. If you want to help us out for a retweet, seeing as it's our new show, we don't have any viewer decisions happening, but we do love it when you help us out, guys. Thank you so much to Gar for following. Welcome to the adventure, my friend. You are a gentle Gar and a scholar. Beast Runner says, "Grats on that, Will. Was a great 24 hours, my friend. Meet a lot of new friends and loved everybody. But hope you get some sleep soon, man." I will do. Thank you very much for kind words. And it was a great one. I really enjoyed this one in particular. Main thing with accents is that you enjoy doing. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Have I ever considered using voice changes for the voices? I haven't, honestly. The only thing that the only one that I've seen that done like particularly well was like Karki's robot voice, like he had like a robot modulator, and that's pretty funny. But no, I don't think I'd probably use voice changes for that, because the voice in itself is its own like instrument. If I can be poetic for a moment. And so like I don't think you really need a voice modulator on it for doing different accents and voices. But we were talking about female voices, how to make a female voice when you've got like a deep voice like Skag4J here, and you don't want to make every woman sound like Brienne of Tarth, like really butch and manly, because he's been gifted with that deep voice there. But you don't want to go the complete opposite side, and they're just ladies here. Oh, I'm defeating the Goblin King. You don't want to be ridiculous about it. I just speak in a like slightly higher tone than I might normally use, and whilst I use that tone as well, I kind of usually sit in a slightly different position to get me into that character. I will think slightly differently. Obviously, I have no insight into the female mind. No man does. But I just think about what this lady or this character wants. I think about the world in which she's in and how she's going about getting that. And so I'll go back to this Curse of Strahd example of this woman who is famine itself. How does she get anything she wants? She just eats it, and she goes out and destroys anything in her path, basically. And so she's a very direct, very powerful woman. And another way to get some examples of that is to look at real life examples. So if you ever dare to, look at Margaret Thatcher speeches, or any kind of powerful woman speeches that you've seen, like for very direct people, I think are quite good examples of getting a kind of a good tone in between. I like this point DDK making of a almost musical quality to the voice, and that's obviously not true of all women, but something I've noticed whilst I've been down here in the South, whilst I'm in Georgia for 2 months here. If you guys don't know, I'm from the UK, but I'm staying with my girlfriend for 2 months. And down here, they have an almost kind of musical quality to like a Southern drawl. It all just kind of flows in a one. And there's a different rhythm and there's a different pacing to that kind of accent than there is in the UK. I think the UK is a bit more kind of staccato, and a bit more like not quite as flowy for some reason. Like everything is smooth down here, like when people speak, and it's almost like a rhythmic musical quality to that kind of tone of speaking. And I think that's something you can incorporate when thinking about trying to voice act a female character, is to have a little bit more like tone in there than you might normally do. Candida's saying a little bit more breath than normal, and so like recognizing what kind of breaths you're taking. Again, I take that from my like posture. So being a little bit more breathy than you might normally, without getting too weird about it. You don't want to be going that far. I think
That's my
that's
serial killer voice.
that's true. Yeah, I think that's a good way to get a little bit on that level. I think like it's important to know that like women don't speak that much differently from guys a lot of the time, especially in like a lot of these fantasy settings that we're in where like women are the female barbarian with a huge great axe alongside the tiny male bard, the kind of there's no reason why they should be like speaking much differently, I suppose, in the content of what they're saying, unless you're in a certain world or context in which that is the case. But I say like don't overthink that too much about oh god, I've got to be a woman now, because there isn't really too much difference in like the way that we speak. Basically, it's just a little bit lighter than the way we normally speak. And so when I'm playing a woman, I tend to go probably slightly more English than I should, or than I intend to, but I'm a little bit more, a little bit lighter in the way I speak. I'm slightly breathier, I suppose, and I think a little bit more about what I say. Yeah, I think I do actually. I think I think about the content of my sentence more when I'm trying to roleplay a woman than a guy, which is worrying, or perhaps just insightful. Maybe I've just gained some insight into something else there. Posture, gestures, breath, facial expressions, position of voice production. Yeah. Gillian Will's accents, but what's up, Barry? Good to see you, buddy. Can't do accents, but leverage dialects and jargon heavily. Yeah, jargon's a big one as well. Like Will's woman voice sounds exactly like my woman voice. Oh my god. Oh, it sounds like your actual woman. Oh man. And I am Hitch's wife. Hello, Hitch. Do the laundry or else. Yeah, I think the actual words that you use are very important as well. So if you're going to a Cockney accent, for instance, you're not going to be using the same like terminology as if I'm like role playing. Like if I'm playing the Queen and I'm speaking to Charles about the corgis, and I'm not going to be like, oh right then, Governor. Different words are to different dialects and different accents. And so when you're doing that southern accent that you say you do, or like a redneck accent, you're not going to be talking about like fine dining and silverware. You're going to be talking about like shotguns and dogs and trucks and crocodiles, gators, manly things, like the things which you're going to be talking about are probably going to be of a different content than if you're from a different area entirely. The Queen totally talks like that. Charles, fam. Charles, get me the fucking corgis now, fam, or else, rude boy. No. Yeah, different regional dialects and different jargon that you use is a thing that you can look up. And different like phrases, like if you're being Canadian, like say a or sure. You can look up online like different well-known phrases or like catchphrases, because often if you're going for an accent, you can just go like completely down the stereotypical way of doing it before you get into any subtlety and like thinking about the accent. Yeah, I say like a lot because I'm from a certain area in the UK where I'm like everyone just says like. And so yeah, that's definitely if someone was doing an impression of me, they would say the things that I would say. So when Sydney was doing an impression of me earlier, she was saying, and welcome to the adventure, blah, 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 blah. You're a gentleman and scholar, because I always say that stuff. And so like just copying things that people from different areas would say, obviously not everyone from England says that, is a way of getting into a different accent or region. I was married to a girl from the Manchester area. Oh, Kaylin, man. Manx. That's not a good accent for me. But anything to throw back at us after that? I'm a chav, mate. Is there anything you want to come back to us on that, or any questions that you want to ask based on that, or just comments?
No, that's really good stuff. If we're going to try practicing, in fact, a buddy of mine who's wanted to become a voice actor the other day sent me a link for this database of dialects, and that was something I'm really going to do: listen to it and try some mimicry.
Yeah. Listening to voices, audiobook's a good one. or podcasts as well. There
Yeah,
are probably a few out
and
there.
things that can be put into a character. I were doing this kind of a thief character that was kind of a little bit like Han Solo or whatever.
Mhm.
So I wanted him to have a specific feel to it. So I added like this Canadian to him, so he went always like, "Eh, so you want to do this, eh?"
Okay.
Always asking the players this kind of question if they were supposed to, which they supposed to say yes or no to, and he kind of just threw it in their face, so they didn't know if they were supposed to answer him or if it was just a thing that is always said. So I mean, there could be other things you can learn from other languages and things too. Eh?
Yeah. Here's an odd bit of advice which I found useful is because I don't know about you, but when you talk to yourself in a room alone, it does make the rest of the people that you live with think that you are a little bit insane, especially when you're doing a lot of weird voices like I end up doing. So
I'm actually used to that. I
yeah,
was one
yeah.
of the first people to have Bluetooth in my county.
Yes. One thing I found of like getting over that like confidence thing of just like making a lot of sound. If you're a kind of person who like doesn't like generally just like blurt out like loads of noises and weird sounds all the time, is like whenever I was drunk, I would walk down the street, and there'd be a sign up when we were walking back, and it was called Howard Yarnold Windows Limited. Howard Yarnold Windows Limited. And every time I walked back and I was really drunk, I would shout out in a different accent, Howard Yarnold Windows Limited, every single time. And I don't know why. It was just a thing that I did when I was drunk. Like I just ended up just like shouting out. So, sometimes a drink can actually go a long way into getting into like, those different different voices, or just going out somewhere, and or just going into your room or something and like closing the door and just speaking in that accent for a while, trying different voices, trying different phrases and stuff like that. Because the only way that you're gonna do it after you listen and start learning is to just start doing it and to start attempting different voices and accents, and just trying to shout it out sometimes can be a thing, or go down to the park where no one else is around and just start talking in an accent, or pretend for a day that you're actually Scottish and see if anyone believes you. That one probably not as good,
Nice.
but that could also happen. I've known people to do that. I I was working one summer on in a theater company, and this actress, and she was like 50 or 60 or something. She's been doing this for a long time. She was playing this character who wouldn't speak to anybody really. She was very, very aloof, and she would not get out of character when she was walking around town. Like she would be in character and she would like look at anyone. You could say to her like, "Oh, hey Miranda," she wouldn't respond. She was still in character, and so like that kind of made me think of a thing where like you can kind of run through these scenes and like examples of scenes that you're going to be having in that character before you actually start playing, to kind of test run different sentences and phrases which I might say, to kind of prepare you a little bit more for words which might come out, and then you can find out words which really don't work when you say it in an accent and some words which really do work.
Yeah,
Because
that's really great, actually.
yeah, I found there were just some words when I started doing some different voices, which was like I can't do them. Like it just doesn't come out. It just sounds wrong for whatever reason. It breaks me out of the accent. But then there was like a few words that just sounded really good when I did them, and so I'd use that word all the time. Like I just end up using that word as that character. So yeah. I also found out I have a strange ability to sound very similar to Warwick Davis a few months ago, and I've just been doing that voice ever since. And I don't know where it comes from, but whenever I do this, I just feel like I just sound exactly like Warwick Davis. Life's too short, guys. So yeah. But also, it's not all just in. That's just like a bad celebrity impersonation. But like the impersonation doesn't just come from like the way I'm saying it. It's the words which you use and like the phrasing in which you say it. Because Warwick says, he's like this all the time, guys, and you've probably heard of me a lot, and I'm just kind of the best. And he has a lot of those knows and and in his speech, and so that kind of just throws it into a little bit more of being a person or like a recognizable voice rather than just talking like this all the time and speaking like Will might normally speak, but just in a different voice. So yeah, different things you can add in. I don't want to go through all of the different acts. Skaggy, what do you say is your favorite voice to do?
Yeah, besides the very dark, low voices,
Mm.
um, I I would say them. However, something that is kind of a good thing to do, if you have seen in certain or role player core books and what have you, under species or classes or something like that, or even in the NPCs that has been pre-done, there are at times these kind of stereotypes or something where it's a couple of lines from that character, um, and I've done so in my own NPCs, put down a couple of lines like how they would kind of make a line up. Doesn't really matter in what, and read that out a couple of times and try to see if that character would say it with this kind of pronunciation, or if they would go for more softer approach, longer approach. So when I see the note, I know that, oh yeah, this line goes like this, so therefore my character will talk like this.
That's cool. Yeah, that's actually quite useful. Games Scottish, I say brew, 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 brew. Scotland, Scotland, Scotland. Oh, Irish have got kind of two. You can go down. You can go down the south of Ireland, and it's much more great. You know, yeah. Oh, my whole house burned down. What a shame. But whereas in Northern Ireland, that's more my Duncan Douglas voice, where it's like, I am so happy right now. I just won the lottery. But they just sound like the most miserable people. You know, everything is just so great. So there's a few differences you can find in different countries as a whole, and of course, like for America, you've got such different varieties and accents. You can go all over the place for regional accents.
One kind of character I really liked was a character I did that was this politician. So the characters never approached him or even had a meeting with him, but he would always talk very long and then end up doing something really fast. And the way he would do it was like, so for this country and everybody else. So he would have this kind of way of doing it, which would make everybody kind of, yeah, okay, I get it. So it would be a kind of a fun way to do it, and that one was really fun to do.
Yeah. So we talked about that one for a while. I was looking at your third kind of question that you put in an email here, which was how to make a more compelling narrative scene, which interests me. So what exactly do you mean by that more
Do
specific?
describe.
Yeah, a lot of like the descriptions, and I created a pretty good environment and good story plots and things like that. But it's like coming down to describing the actual scene and what's in the room or what's in the castle or things like that is something I haven't spent much time on. And I was wondering if you had tips and tricks or some advice for that.
For sure.
Yeah. So when it comes to describing scenes, I found something as a player is I'm really bad at listening to long descriptions of scene sayings, and that is just me. But I know for a bunch of players, it can be a bit of a turn off when you've got 20 lines of text to listen to or to kind of figure out as to where everything is in the room. See you later, Redondo. Good to see you, buddy, as well as the frog. But yeah, I found something which I find as a player and which I've now kind of implemented into my own DMing style is I'll be much kind of briefer onto when I walk into a room of like the setting of a room because I'll give them like the major kind of important parts in the room. You know, like there is a desk, there's a hearth, there's a fire, there's a fire running in the hearth, as well as maybe there's a cabinet off to one side with some strange trinkets in which you can't see at this point. And so you don't have to go ahead when they enter the room and describe everything which is in that interesting cabinet of trinkets, because maybe they'll go and investigate that, maybe they won't. And if they
Yeah.
want to investigate that, they can go and you can give them some more descriptions of some items and things which might be inside. But when you're initially setting the scene, is think of it like a Bob Ross painting. You're giving them the broad strokes, and you're kind of painting you're getting the canvas nice and wet, and
Yeah.
oh yeah, and you're just basically trying to give them like an overall picture. Because then, as a player, I'm thinking, what is in this cabinet? What is there anything on the mantelpiece on the hearth? Is there anything burning in the hearth? And then I start to think those questions myself. Whereas if I am given the information, it's a less effective it's a less effective way of learning. It's like a teaching thing. If you tell someone something, they're less likely to like remember it than if you let them explore it and learn it themselves. And so giving them that more kind of open approach of doing it, and then they go and look in themselves and give themselves they take the initiative to do that, can be, and then you add in some little happy trees, of course, can be a way of them like memorizing and remembering something a bit more than just like force feeding them like 10 lines of text. I don't know. I don't tend to be the kind of DM who will be like, and there is a crackling hearth in the fireplace which is burning away softly and casting out a mellow light onto the room as you look around you and you see the dust falling down upon the mantle, and you realize that this house has been here for 2,000 years, but how is it still standing? You're not too sure as you look down at the rotten floorboards and you see beyond the closet with these strange trinkets inside, all of which are, I could go on, but
I'm
I
so
tend to be
moved.
it's so beautiful. And that's a perfectly valid style of doing things. I tend to do that more with like horror, because like the kind of the grittiness of horror, I tend to go to more towards that. But when I'm playing, like, you just walk into a fucking room, you just or
Yeah.
it's an important room, but like you don't need to go into that level of detail, because every room that they walk into isn't going to be this incredibly interesting room which you walk into. And so I think giving them this kind of, maybe some odd qualities and some adjectives about it is fine, but I think again, as I tend to say, like, you don't need to worry too much about fascinating over the detail, because you'll get bogged down in your prep. It will slow down the pace of the game, and one thing which Belgraph's saying was sometimes fine to let the players write down bits of the story. That is true. The way which we've done that before is to give them party roles, and so each player has a different role. So one player's task is to remember all the names of the NPCs and who they are. They have the NPC address book. And so whenever they meet an NPC who could be important or interesting, they write down his name, who he is, and what interaction they had, like a few sentences, a few lines. So later on in the story, when everyone's like, who's that guy? The guy of the NPC address book can just say, look, he's this guy. Similarly, you can have a guy about locations. And so every time you walk into an important dungeon room or just a new town or something, he writes down the name of that town, where it is, or if you walk into that room, important thing which you found within that room. The other one would be someone like a loot tracker, to someone who keeps
It kind of
track of all
solves
the
itself. If you have like a
Yeah.
thief character, he takes all the traps. We have the bard talking about every social events. So different person for different tasks. But what I wanted to kind of make a note of is two things that I've used quite a lot. Is if there is a room that they own, or if there's a room that maybe the tavern, you get a room. I happen to do this quite a lot. I tell them to describe the room for themselves.
Yeah.
You open the door and what do you see? Maybe a bed or two. What else? And they kind of get their own imagination rolling. And yeah, there should be like a rug. Maybe the window is open. Yeah, sure, it's open. A small breeze comes in. It's partially night, whatever. So they will get a little bit themselves into it, and that will make them more remembering the room itself. The other thing that I often do is I kind of put myself into that room or that dungeon or whatever, and is there a specific smell? Do I feel something? Yeah, it's a damp, really cold dungeon. Maybe that is enough for the players to latch on to the idea what I'm trying to convey too. You come into this really narrow, damp, cold dungeon leading down. You don't need anything with the how the rocks looks or how the ground is. They know it's kind of narrow, it's cold, and it goes downwards. So small things that kind of just start their own imagination going. When the most important stuff, then you can go for maps and what have you to get exact length to the next object and whatever.
Yeah.
But small things,
Yeah.
let the players get it too. What do you feel? He feels this and that, or she feels it's much more narrow here. Okay, let's make it more narrow then.
Yeah, I feel pretty alpha right now. What's up, Alpha? Welcome to the adventure, my friend. You are a gentle alpha and a scholar. What's up, Blue Dart? Good to see you, my friend. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and this is a point in general on your note of making a narrative scene more compelling. If you watch some of the stuff we've been doing lately, we've been talking, and a lot of the GMs on Encounter Roleplay have been incorporating this idea I had a while back in 4th edition. Well, kind of from 4th edition rules, and then started using that in my Song of Ice and Fire role-playing games, and then later into D&D 5th edition, was this idea of a travel mechanic. And we call it a travel mechanic because we most use it when we're traveling long distances of space. And one of the most difficult scenes to make compelling for a dungeon master is travel. It can be the most boring thing on the earth, right? Because you're trying to get from A to B. You don't necessarily have anything that much planned because they've just decided to go to the next village. But you don't want them to just kind of quick, what do they call it in
Fast travel.
Yeah, fast travel. You don't want to just like quick travel over to the next area because it feels like a video game. It doesn't feel like very real, does it? And even if you just take like 2 lines of saying, "Oh, and you travel for a while and then you're there," that doesn't feel too like gritty or too like realistic. And obviously, it depends on the kind of game that you're running. But I think most DMs enjoy kind of giving some a bit more crunch to those travel encounters. And the way which I've tried up doing that is a bit like a skill challenge from 4th edition, but a little bit changed. There's the rules on the website, and I'll go and shoot them your way because they might be something that you want to have a look at as a resource. But we also use that for a lot of other things now as well. This idea of the player having control over the narrative, and it's there on the website there. So the idea is, and you throw over control to the players. You can make them roll initiative, and you say, think of a problem whilst you're traveling that you encounter. It could be, like a tree falls down, you got to get over it. There's a river which is on your way. Maybe you encounter goblins, you got to run away from them. Any kind of problem which the party can think of, or the player can think of, which happens to either their character or just the party as a whole. They then need to find out a solution to that problem. And so if there's a river to ford, maybe they have to find a place in the river to ford. Maybe they have to cut down a tree to get over it. And whatever that solution may be, you then the third point is you just find a relative skill check to what they're trying to how they're trying to solve that problem. So they're trying to cut down a tree. Maybe it's athletics. They're trying to jump across. Maybe it's acrobatics. And so on and so forth. And so that kind of 3-stage way of giving the player some control over the story is, first of all, a way for you to do less prep and for less onus of the narration to be on you all the time. It gives them a bit more control of the story because maybe they've got a scene in their head which they've been wanting to play out for a while. Maybe they've been, they've just been fascinating over like saving a farmer from a burning down farmhouse or something like that. And then it can make them be really awesome, but it also leads to great extended scenes. So sometimes these little travel mechanics. So for instance, Mitch's character it says that we go past a village, but the farmhouse is burning down, and I'm going to have to jump inside to get it. You don't just have to do one roll there. You could go into a whole scene, right? And then you could figure out who the farmer is and how he's thankful to the player. Maybe he gives them some information, and it can lead into their own scenes without you having to create that scene yourself. You just kind of add on to the player's narration. What's up, White Fox, Black Fox? We made it, and we're streaming again. We're alive, yay! But yeah, that's one thing to do, and nothing like Skagaf was saying, giving that the party some narrative control of a story is really interesting, I think, because it's good on several levels. Because, like I say, it takes that away from you, but also it kind of trains your players to think like a dungeon master has to think. And if you've got, especially new players, or perhaps you're a little bit tired of DMing yourself after a while, and you want to get someone else to DM, I think a really great way of doing that is to give them some control over it. Because they begin to learn the skills that you need as a dungeon master. Those improvisational skills, you put them on the spot a little bit. They have to think of something cool, and they also learn the game quite well because they're learning how to use skill checks and different mechanics like that. So not only of travel, last night in the Monster Mash game, which is great fun, where we all played different monsters, Mitch said, we're going to use the travel mechanic, but we're going to use that for not actually any travel. We're just going to use that for a scene which you guys want to describe to me. So he was saying, we basically defeated the king. We were all monsters. We defeated the king. And he said, so what are you guys going to be doing over the next months as you're ruling over your evil tyranny or over these lands? And we each went round and we each described a scene in which we wanted to happen. We role played out a little bit of that scene with Mitch. So I said something like, oh, I'm going to go, I'm going to make an evil lich tower somewhere. And then we like role played out a little bit of that scene. Like Mitch jumps in as an NPC, which I've described. We have a little quick scene. And then we've done a lot of narrative exposition without you just saying something happens. Because that very kind of like, almost like Tolkien-esque style of being like, and then this thing happens over the course of 10 years, your characters travel across the lands and lo, they are there. Whereas what's much more like exciting
so moved
for a player,
It's so good.
so good. What's much more exciting for the player is to like have a little bit of reign over that. It's not something for everyone, and it takes a little bit of getting used to for the group. For instance, if you have a lot of new players, maybe they're a little bit nervous, then they might not necessarily want to be jumping in all the time as being put on the spot like that. But then you can get the party to help as a group. So if a player isn't responding well to being put on the spot and they're having difficulty finding inspiration or like a problem and how to solve it, then you can and say, well, look, why don't you speak to the rest of your group and together you can come up with something. And that way it's like collective storytelling. Without all of the onus being on that one player. But if you're playing with role-playing enthusiasts, as you said you're going to be in this next few months here, then I think they're going to love that because it gives them control and they're like, oh, great, I'm like almost in the DM seat here for a moment. Of course, you have like free reign to veto anything which they say, so you don't have to be like, if they say, oh, and I find the dragon horde, then you could be like, well, no. Instead, maybe you find a young drake, or you find you hear rumors of something else. You don't have to give them everything that they want. It's just a way to kind of give them a bit more. What do you think about that off the top there, Jay?
I like that. That's something I really want to try now. I mean, that's some good stuff, and yeah, especially with them helping with the workload, so to speak.
Exactly.
It's going to be really nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus, yeah, like I said, a lot of them are going to be, expression based as far as what fun they have. So that would probably work really great and give me better insight into what they like to do to have fun.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm using a very light version of that. Often when we are doing travels, be it fantasy or modern or horror, whatever, I could say that we are traveling from this point to that point. Somewhere here, we're finding ourselves strapped on in this cart or whatever. And what do your character do? What does he or she want to express during this kind of part? And if you are doing some camping, who does what? Trying to motivate them to actually get their professions going. A rogue or a thief maybe going out setting traps. The healer or maybe the scholar will open a book by the fire, whatever, and then they are painting the picture for you. And they are starting to engage in the role play as well. So that's a way that you can do, not just with the travel mechanics, but whenever, let's say they are eating or whatever, you're starting them out and letting them do a little bit of their own. And I really like it.
Sounds great.
Yeah. And like I say, you've got like free control to say no to the player as well, which
Yeah.
can be important. Because, sometimes you'll give them an inch and they'll take a mile. So you can feel free to kind of say, well, actually, no, no, but this, to give them a different option to go with there.
I
I
see where you're
suppose.
going, but I will say no.
Yeah, yeah. Getting the RP train sometimes doesn't stop as design destination if players can derail it sometimes. It's good. Yeah, I think so. We're talking about they're talking about in chat they're having these different flaws and bonds and motivations and goals and wishes for their characters, and that being important. I think if you're running a long-term campaign, which it sounds like you'll be running like several sessions here, then it's important that you get your motivations and wishes and bonds and flaws and traits from your characters, your players, so you can write them down and have a note of them. And so that can help as well, obviously in a bunch of different ways. But for that kind of quote unquote travel mechanic, then that could be helpful because if they're struggling to think of something, well, maybe that they have a huge fear of fire, and maybe that's why the farmhouse is particularly challenging for them because they've got to save this orphan child, but they're the only one there burning it down. How do they solve that problem? And so that can help you give them prompts almost. Gar says,
Dilemma.
yeah, Gar says, just got to start set. I'm trying to DM Lost Minds of Fandelver for my friends, but I'm having trouble keeping the game fluid. Gar, like I was saying, in 25 minutes, we'll get into like a full-on Q&A for you guys. We can ask us absolutely whatever, and we'll go as in-depth as possible as we're doing here at the moment. I know all your guys' questions. Someone, what a shame, Hitch is gone.
And one thing that I've done with certain players, might I add, not everybody likes it, is that you could, as DM, kind of point to certain people, send them a note. If we are online, you can PM them and kind of go for a hint. I want you to dissolve your quest here. I want you to talk with this character about this. I want you to proclaim your love for that one. Whatever it is that I, as a GM, know that they are holding back, you can actually point it to them and say, start it up, bring it up. Is there something that they are holding as a secret? Maybe you want it out in the game. You can poke them and say, start that game, start it up. Works with certain players, not everybody.
Yeah. What's up, Kim? How's it going? What have we talked about? We've talked about NPCs. We've talked about voices and ways to make some interesting different voices. Fuck you, Emma. You're just as bad as each other. And we've also talked about narrative scenes being more gripping or interesting. So I think for like a summary on our different points that we've been making here, for making NPCs interesting, you can make them quirky, make them different. You can have different word banks of adjectives and terms and motivations and goals for these different characters to just draw upon for when you need them. Have word banks of different names. It can be important as well to when suddenly you need to draw upon one, you just draw it out of the hat and have a name. When it comes to voices, you can check out a bunch of different YouTube videos on how to learn some different voices. Learning different vocabularies from different areas can be important.
And check different voice actors, I would say.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Yeah, and different tone, pacing, and different
watch
ways
Saturday Night Live and stuff like that too.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, they do a bunch of good different sketches and stuff on there. Comedy sketches are actually another one now I think of it, where they do a bunch of different voices and characters and ones where you can draw inspiration upon not just funny characters, but you can take aspects from that as well. learning regional accents, doing bad accents is fine and can be quite funny. And just like, practicing maybe just like 1 a month in a room or just screaming out to the world somewhere that you don't care who can hear you.
But who can hear you?
I know who can hear me. Shadowner can hear me. Welcome, my friend, to the adventure. You're a gentle shadow and a scholar. Thanks for following, my friend. Whose lines it anyway? That makes some interesting roleplay. That's true, actually. Yeah, that'd be a good game to play one day.
That's a good one.
It's good for the improv.
Yeah, and then for when it comes to this question of making the narrative scenes more gripping or interesting, you can give control over the players. I was talking about our kind of travel mechanic idea of throwing the owners of the story onto them to give them some control over that story, taking the workload off you a little bit and helping you out, as well as when it comes to like just describing rooms and scenes and set pieces, as to not needing to go into a Tolkien level of detail onto them. And to let them explore themselves, and they'll begin to learn a bit better whilst that is happening. So that is pretty cool. I've got some few points. So any questions regarding any of those points, Jay, that you want us to come on?
No, that's a lot to take in, and I just want to get trying it actually.
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, when I kind of start doing things. Yeah, okay. So we'll, seeing as we've kind of touched on our 3 topics here, we're gonna go into a bit more Q&A for you guys here. So if you have any questions, we'll go ahead and try and answer them over here in the next hour and so, and we'll try and work some of those points that you guys make into points that we are making to Jay before to keep things relevant. So Kim the Gamer says, so I am as new to D&D as you can get. What characters do you find funniest to play as? The funniest characters to play as, I don't know really. As a player, it can be fun to on one shots when we're drinking to do like a silly like impersonation of some celebrity. So I do a Warwick Davis impression that I find hilarious because I'm usually pretty drunk when I'm doing it. What else? I like playing a gravedigger called Fletch who has no teeth, and all he serves to do in the adventuring group is to bury the people that they kill as well as the players that die. And so he's under the impression that he's not a hero or an adventurer. He's just there to bury people, because wherever these people go, they end up killing people or they end up dying. And so Flesh is a really fun one to play because he just ends up going around there and digging graves and digging up holes for people. And when someone dies, I'll pay a couple of coppers, put them in the hole, and then I'll try not to piss on them. So he's a pretty fun character to play. But if you are new, Kim the Gamer, feel free to ask any questions. We're in a Q&A section here. So if you have any questions about how to play or any ideas on how to get started playing, then we'll be happy to help. Just go ahead and ask. Things you can say about your DM, but not your girlfriend. Yeah, that'd be a good one. Garth, go ahead, man.
In response to Kim, I've actually got a game on Sunday nights where I'm playing my first gnome ever, and it's a trickery domain cleric. And so I'm constantly trying to think of how I can mess with people and pull pranks and having a lot of fun with that.
Nice.
So find an odd combination, like maybe a paladin with an urchin background and you only wear leather,
Yeah. That's
Those
great.
are fun.
Yeah. So let's see what else we had here. Gar said, I'm also not sure how to let players do other methods of getting past hostile NPCs other than just killing them. So giving them some different ways of solving a situation. So we always talk here on Encounter Roleplay about the ABCs of DMing. And what we mean by that is to have 3 different options to solve any problem. And so when we think of a problem, and obviously it's not just up to you to like give them those options. A lot of the time it's up for your players to explore the options that are possible. So you don't necessarily want to say you could kill the guy, you could sneak past him, or you could try and persuade him. You don't necessarily want to like straight up say that to them. They can obviously explore and see if they can persuade him or see if they can sneak past him, that sort of thing. But giving them these different ways to solve a problem, whether or not it's like I guess you said hostile NPC encounters. So you could give them some information, perhaps, if they're trying to get a dragon's horde, for instance, they could fight the dragon, yeah, but they could also find out from the local dwarves that there's a mine shaft running parallel to it underground, which is a little bit dangerous, but it's not as dangerous as having to fight the dragon. But you'd have to like sneak through the tunnel so that the dragon wouldn't hear you. And you could also say that you hear that the dragon is very easily persuaded by a certain jewel that he's after. And if you could bring him this jewel, he would give you some of his gold in return. So you can straight up tell the players these options. And you can always think of these kind of ABCs, different ways that you could solve a problem without necessarily doing a straight up combat. And even when it comes to combat, there are ways that you can do combats without making them all about just fighting the bad guy. So for instance, maybe they're fighting the dragon, and the dragon kind of like raises its wings up, and the tunnel, the cave starts to fall in. You now have a few rounds to get out of this cave before before the whole thing comes down upon you. And so like they're going to have to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to stay and fight this thing, or if they're going to try and get out as well, and try and not get crushed by all this masonry. So there's different ways you can go about situations without making it a straight up kind of just combat, because I understand your pain if you're in a situation where they just want to fight everything, and every fight is just a static kind of boring thing which starts to happen, which can happen occasionally, you know.
I would say burn the players a couple of times.
Yeah.
If they kill the prince or whatever, another bad character takes over, or the prince actually is innocent, or twist the plot around in the end so that the players actually gets this, oh shit, our action wasn't so good. Maybe next time we will investigate a little bit more before we actually kill the NPCs. Turn it around a little bit, and the boss fighting is really cool too. If you kind of go around making the boss fights a little bit more trickier, different phases. After a while, some guards comes in, and everything switches, becomes range DPS or whatever. Try to mix it up, not just one guy, everybody else, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, I think that's a good point there. We had some other questions I didn't want to miss.
Don't miss.
No question. So how do you deal with retconning as a DM? So retconning, being when a new piece of information comes into the story which conflicts with a piece of information which had previously been established, and then being like, oh, actually, we have to get rid of that thing which happened, or that thing which was said. Usually I haven't found it a problem. I don't think there's been many cases where I've actively had to like be straight up being like, oh, that totally doesn't work whatsoever. That can't happen. You know what? Forget that scene happened, or forget that town exists, or forget that person said that thing. Usually it's more like when I'm saying something, I don't know if you'd consider this or not, but sometimes when you're in the role of an NPC, they just say something wrong, which like NPC wouldn't say, or they like say, they give them like a slightly bit of wrong information. So you've been talking for 2 hours about like how the goblins are in the forest, and then the character says that, oh, they're in the cave off to the east, and then, they're in the cave, and you're like, oh, I didn't mean to say that. Sorry. She says they're in the forest. Little things like that. Usually, I don't think people would really consider being like big kind of retconning stuff. Usually, I haven't had a case where I've had to do anything like that. Skag, if you ever had to kind of had a big retcon or anything really come up in the past, or how would you deal with it if it did?
Yeah, if it is like you are kind of describing now, that you mess up when you're trying to describe something, I haven't met any player that will be like, oh shit, I'm going home now. You're wrecking the whole game.
Yeah. Right.
They will be like, yeah, okay. So is it a forest now? Okay. Forest. So no, I haven't really met that problem, to be honest.
Yeah, I think if I did, I'd just be kind of open about it, and in fact, like, oh, I messed up, guys. And they'd be like,
it has been times where I have maybe gone previously stating, this is actually a bad place, and a couple of weeks later I'm picking up the game, we are gaming, and all of a sudden it's a good place, and they're checking their notes, and they're, last time you said it was a bad place. Oh, yeah, sure, it's a bad place, it's a bad place. So
Yeah.
yeah, be open about it, and most players just go for yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that happen before, and I don't remember the exact situation, but I basically just apologized and said, "Yeah, you're right, I screwed up."
Yeah.
Yeah, we moved on from there.
And like like Sky was saying, no one really like is going to care that anyone messed up, and that's a thing which that I was talking about last night, and I end up talking about most weeks. Like confidence in like messing up. Like don't be afraid to mess up because no one really cares that you're messing up.
Flip the table and go home.
Yeah, no one's gonna like punish you in any form of way other than like ripping shit out of you sometimes, or like ribbing you about it. It's all in good fun. And sometimes like messing up is like the best thing about situations. When you remember that time that Jay said that the dragon was, and it was actually this, and we had to go all back and do this. That would be like a point of like memory and like laughter for a group. So it wouldn't even be like, oh god, remember that time Jay did that? Yeah, now we all hate him because it's bag for messing that thing up.
Never play again.
Yeah, never disgrace our halls again.
Burning up everything.
So, good questions getting in here from all you guys. How do you decide whether intimidation or persuasion works? Just base it off rolls. Base up a mixture of role playing and then let them roll if you think you're convinced by what they're saying. So if you're trying to convince the guards who give you the key to the prison, and I say, I convinced the guards to give me the key, then I wouldn't let someone roll on that.
It's all depending on the situation in hand.
Yeah.
I mean, often I ask them what they are trying to do for intimidation. Yeah. Do they kind of lean in? Do they just stand and shout? What they use for the intimidation? And maybe
what points do they make?
In points, whatever. And then I put in a couple of modifiers, maybe something good as they are describing. I'm leaning forward and grabbing his throat and being really up close. Damn, that's hard. Okay, you get +5 for that shit. I mean, you can listen in and see how they want to do it. So, yeah, a little bit what they want and then roll from that.
Nice. Yeah. There was a question which was how do you deal with an unprepared DM from Me Devil Mike?
I would say give him some food and come back in a half hour.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that. But I'm guessing this is a question where it's like this DM has been repeatedly completely unprepared like every session. It's getting to the point where it's like, oh, we want a bit more preparation. It's really obvious that they have got nothing prepared. It's like it's gotten to that point where it's like, well, they clearly haven't got anything. And every session is like 100% improv, which can be fun occasionally, but you want something a bit more there. I can understand that feeling from Mike there.
Some improvement. Yeah.
You're wanting a little bit more maybe. So for me, as ever, when it comes to these characters which are not in problems which are not in character, anything which is not in character should be dealt with out of character. And so what you need to do, or anyone that has a similar problem, is go and speak to your DM and say, listen, do you think you could prep a little bit more for these games? Like, I'm looking for this kind of game with a little bit more preparation, a little bit more depth to it. Would it be possible if you could do that a bit more? And more often than not, the DM will probably say like, yeah, sure thing, man. I'll try and put a bit more effort into doing these sort of things that you're looking for. And if they don't, if they're just going to continue to be like really lazy about it and they're not going to put in effort for it, then they clearly don't really like care about it as much as you do. And maybe you want to find another group to play with if they're like repeatedly just kind of being really lazy, or maybe you start DMing yourself and you start putting more effort into it than that person was. Maybe they're a really good player. It's not a good DM. But if they're not running the kind of game that you're looking for, you can find another DM who is running that kind of game that you're looking for. But for me, as ever, if it's this X player is doing this thing which is making me upset, or X DM is he's doing this douchebaggy thing, then the conversation needs to be out of character and sitting down with that person, telling them why you feel like that is a problem. Because let's say it again, guys, it's all about feelings. We're playing lasers and feelings earlier. But when it comes down to you telling someone that something that they do makes you feel a certain way, they can't argue with that, right? So if I come to Skagif and I say, Skagif, you're so, like, why aren't you prepping more, man? Like, I want a more prepared game. Why aren't you doing this? Like, you should be doing X,
So
Y,
you're
and Z.
accusing me of failing this city?
It comes across as much more confrontational than you might want it to be, or even intend it to be. But if I came to Skagif and say, listen, Skagif, the fact that there's not a lot of preparation in each game makes me kind of feel like there's not so much point me putting in the amount of effort that I put in, and I kind of feel like I'd like you to put a little bit more effort in the preparation into these games, because that's the kind of game I'm looking for. And when you say, when you phrase it in that way, I feel this, Skagif or anyone else in the world doesn't have a leg to stand on telling me how I feel. I can feel however I want about a situation, and no one can argue with me about that. But I could certainly get into an argument with Skagif saying, why aren't you doing this? You should be doing this. So there's ways of phrasing things when you come to speak to people in these situations, because feelings can get hurt if I come to Skagif in a way and say you should be doing more, you're not doing enough. That could make someone feel like a little bit upset, like you're not appreciating them or the work that they're putting in, for instance. So there's ways of speaking to people without getting feelings hurt or anything like that.
But in short,
doing a kind, loving
talk to the players and talk to the DMs that you feel are not really a part of what you want to do. And if you feel it's not going to resolve, maybe you need to change group or DM. Yeah. That's simply it.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes you can't control everything. I mean, so change.
Exactly. Yeah, you can ask people, but maybe this guy has got a 9 till 5 job, and he's got kids, and he's got a life, and he's got work, and all these other commitments on top of playing D&D, and he comes to D&D like with no prep because he enjoys like hanging out with his mates. Plenty of people are like that. Do not take it nearly as seriously as we do, and that is perfectly valid way to play. And so talk to your group as Dom of diplomacy. Talk to your group as well. Are they having the same feelings as you are? Because maybe the group are just like the DM and they're very happy to have this style of game. In that case, it's not necessarily the DM that's the problem. It might be you that's the problem. You're looking for a different kind of game. And so the way that you can do that is to go into a different game and find a different group.
And what you can try out if you're a buddy with the DM and you really want to play with that person and that person doesn't really do any prep, maybe change to written adventure modules or something like that. That may be easier to get into and not do that much of a prep. But my last advice would be to change. You can do better, and if it doesn't really work, then change.
Yeah. What are you going to say on that, Jade?
About your point about if somebody's like busy with family and job and stuff like that, their career, offer to help out. If you could babysit for a couple hours, then they'll have time to come up with something more substantial.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, actually. If you want to kind of help out in other ways other than just telling someone, or maybe even you can give them pointers on some ideas. Maybe you're a bit of a DM yourself and you've got some things that you do to help prep quickly, or maybe you send them to an encounter roleplay video. There you go, on the YouTube. And say, like, look, these guys, they're talking about all this stuff. Maybe you should take a few hints on. Maybe you should come on the DM's lesson on Sunday, and Will and Skagif will give you a grilling, piece of shit. And maybe that could be a way to get involved. What is our advice on giving and keeping your players, their characters motivated and adventuring together? And make sure they've got like a common goal. There has to be some kind of goal which they are working to together. Otherwise, there's no point that these people might be working together. Bonds of friendship form over time, but firstly, they need to be kind of thrust together with some events and some reason to be together, aside from being friends. 20 sessions down the line. So I think that very important for their motivations when you're doing character creation. Have a session 0 where you sit down and think about the campaign that you're running, and the different players who are going to be in it, different characters who are going to be in it, and ways to tie their motivations together. And to ways to like weave those into one another, because it's quite easy to do once you kind of sit down at session 0 and start that.
Yeah, I took Mitch's advice from DM's lessons a few months ago about doing like a little mini character interview. So I've got a set of 4 questions I give every person, and one of those is why did you seek out a group to accomplish your goals, and the other is why are you staying with them, and then let them come up with their own reasons.
Yeah, I think that's go ahead, Skag. You look like you're going to speak there.
Nope.
No, okay.
But I can say that often, and I did this with my Star Wars campaign I'm doing with in real life friends. I do have them. We sat down, and there will be like, I think it's 5 players or 6. And we sat down and did the character creation together and said like, you want to play this, and you want to play this, and this is the ship we are going to be in for the remainder of the campaign. What is your position here? Okay, this is your position. How does that tie to the rest of the group? And like talking to each other and getting everybody in link and sync rather to everybody and getting motivation talk and sitting down, just giving everybody a little bit of a prep time before we actually starting session 1. I think that is really, really good.
That Hitch gif, though, right? All right, we've got on to that one. Let's get on to these other questions. We've got plenty to get through here. What do we like about? What do we think about tailoring treasures specifically for certain characters? Yeah, I think it can be cool. I used to know a DM who used to have like a wish list of different items that the players would come up with. So they'd think of like 20 items that it could be cool for them to have later on in the campaign, and eventually he would give them out one of these items randomly selected or like specifically selected, and then finally, like after a long time, the character kind of gets the item that they're looking for. I think it can be good because it can lead into different like side quests and stuff. So if they're looking for the orb of elemental destruction, that could be, okay, now you're onto the Temple of Elemental Evil. You can go over there, and that's like a whole new side quest or quest that you can get into. So they can even more hooks and character motivations and things that these characters might want, I think can be cool. I don't think it works when it's the kind of case where oh look, suddenly there is the strange Onyx Panther item which you've been looking for 2 days. You've wanted 2 days ago, and now it's suddenly there. That doesn't seem to work for me so much. I like the more kind of structured way of that kind of potentially working. Not saying that it can't work for different groups and different players, but I think it feels
find it
more...
under a rock, the most powerful ring in the world.
It feels a little bit less kind of real when that happens.
What a coincidence!
Yeah.
But I had a couple of things to take with us with that too. There was this player that wanted a specific sword, and the specific sword was made with a specific metal. So what I did was he found the metal himself, the metal for the sword. So it kind of started as a chain quest. He found the sword. Now he wanted to find a person that could enchant it with the enchant he wanted, and etc., etc., etc. So start from a small thing that could be the magical item that the player really wanted to have.
Yeah.
Doesn't just give them straight away, so to speak.
Yeah. Make them work for that.
Yeah. So, drag the adventure out a little bit.
So Beast Runner says, what encounter roleplay does best? I see every session ending of a wrap up, and how do you feel question. That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. At the end we do. We go around and say, what do we think of that session, and any kind of input and feedback, both from you guys as well as the players as well. So that's another thing, at the end of a session, break out from it. What did you guys think? Anything that we can change, improve on? because your work as a DM is never done. You've never kind of like made it.
I
The
don't
only time.
know if the viewers would like to see that. We often do it off cam exactly after we kind of ended, and the other ones are supposed to get on. So it's a little bit of a hectic moment there.
Yeah, my number one question is, did you have fun? Then
Exactly,
see what their response is.
Yeah, yeah. And then if there are certain bits that they didn't have fun doing, then you can tailor that again. So like, they're like, yeah, I really loved it when we fought the dragon, but that long like scene where we were at the feast, like trying to do all this political stuff, like I wasn't really so into that. And then you can tailor like, okay, more adventure, less long political scenes and stuff like that. You can tailor it to your players' needs. And also, like, there's probably going to be some variety in the party where it's going to be the case that, one player, or maybe the one who, like, tends to head towards more role-playing stuff, really enjoyed that feast scene. Like, they really just loved doing that whole interaction, and they carried that scene. The other players were just kind of sitting there and like, yeah, where's the dragon? And so when that happens, we get like different players. You can have different scenes which are kind of for different players and characters. So you can have that scene where it's like, oh, let's have this right for this guy because he's going to enjoy that. Whereas I'm not going to throw the long political scene of the Dwarven kingdoms towards the player who's playing the dwarf because he's probably not going to enjoy that so much. And so there's ways to tailor your story around different different like hooks and things like that. I'm reading other questions here whilst I'm speaking.
Yeah, I could end it with a lot of the players after you've done a session for a couple of hours, they have so much impressions and stuff they have been doing and experiencing. They often want to share that. They want to go like, yeah, I really liked that fight. I really liked how we sat down and talked about that. I really liked how that thing came out and whatever. So many players, I find, often wants to kind of let something come out after a session. So take that time in general to let them converse a little bit and say like, okay, everybody gets 5 minutes, 1 minute, whatever the time you have. Go through, nobody interrupts, just say what you really liked, what you didn't like, and pass it on.
Yeah. Nice. That's like a not only just like a good thing for D&D, but it's like a writing process as well, like just a creative process on anything. It's just like, let's shut up. What did you say? Spotlight on you. What did you think? Tell us what you're thinking, basically.
Yeah, you could have a couple of very, very short questions that you want to be answered. If it's the first session you're doing, maybe you will kind of go, did you like this form of storytelling? And I want you to answer, did you like the setting, etc., etc. You maybe have like 3 questions. That's about the time frame you want to include. And go, you, 1 minute each, no interruptions.
Yeah, and thanks so much to Patillo Express for following. Welcome to the adventure, my friends. You're a gentleman. Alex, thanks for joining. I will get to all your questions, guys. Don't worry. Sometimes we spend longer on others that we haven't answered before. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. A little kind of feedback session at the end. Take notes on that as well. Yeah. Do kind of tailor towards your group because you should do that before you start a game and after you start a game. Is you take that feedback. And after a while, it becomes less important to take that feedback because you become really comfortable with that group and you just know what they want and what they like and what they don't like and what parts they enjoyed. And you become, aware that, okay, he's probably not going to enjoy that scene, but, it's okay. So you'll get used to that soon.
But it's often kind of fun to give the players the option to relax. And a very important note is to tell them, if you don't want to say anything, just pass it along. Certain players doesn't really want to get in the position of the light either, and they don't really have anything. So tell them it's okay just to pass it along to the next guy.
Exactly, yeah. And that goes to something I was saying the other week and the other night is, there needs to be... sometimes when you have like a shy players, we often get this question about, someone who's a bit quieter at the table, who someone's a bit less socially kind of outgoing as everyone else at the table, maybe, or just new to the group. Whilst it can be obvious to you that you're a friendly and open and welcoming dungeon master and you're not going to judge them for anything they say or anything they think, sometimes it's worth just saying that to a player. It's worth just saying, look, whilst we're at this table, you do not have to fear any, like judgment on getting things wrong. You can be like open with us in terms of what you're thinking, because the communication is important in the group. And so, whilst you might know that in your head, and everyone else on the table knows it, if you've got a new player, they might not be aware of that. And so, just because sometimes there's like an unspoken feeling of a group, like they know that they can say anything to each other, and they know that you can talk shit about your DM and it's gonna be fine, or you can mess up and it's gonna be okay. But when you have a new player or you're just starting a new session, it's worth saying to your players, look, if you mess up, I do not care. It's fine. It's all good. So that's just a point. We've got a bunch of questions, so I'll stop running here and we'll get into them. Dane, I wanted to make the point for Dane. I mostly watch the channel for these AMA sessions. I'm insecure as a DM, so getting random advice is extremely helpful and helps with confidence. We always get this confidence question. There was always this thing where people are afraid of getting something wrong. You probably guys are sick and tired of me hearing about talking about me saying people are afraid of getting things wrong, but it comes up every single day. There's usually a person who's like, I'm new to D&D, I'm afraid of getting something wrong, or I don't have confidence in doing something. Then the advice which would give eventually is that you're going to have to go out and do it. Because you
and
can
it kind
do
of ties up with what we have been talking
exactly
previous.
You can do as much preparation and procrastination and as preparing as possible, but at the end of the day, it's a social game. You have to be okay with eventually going out there and speaking to people and putting yourself on the line and messing things up. It's fine if you don't get things wrong. If you get things wrong, rather, it's fine if you mess up and you screw up. People are going to forgive you. It's your first DM session, or it's your first DM session for a long time, or first in 5th edition, or it's your first time with a group, or you're just nervous about it. Be honest about how you're feeling. Set their expectations at that level where you're not saying like, I am the greatest dungeon master, welcome all, and then like you're like really nervous on the inside. Just be honest with the people, and
take small steps. Take a small module, just make one shot game, something very, very short and small. Start out and feel out the game. How you want to improve.
That's really the best thing. Start small, play with only 1 or 2 players till you get comfortable.
Get a feel for it.
Yeah, the smaller you start, the kind of bigger. I know a lot of people just decide to jump in like a real deep end. Like I've decided to create this huge world and overall campaign. I'd recommend going with like a one shot or like a small module. The D&D start set is good for that. We're giving away a copy. But I'd say let me go. Give away there. So you can intellect there. But don't be worried about getting things wrong, Dane.
And you can watch some of the previous Encounter Roleplay videos talking about just that.
There we go, the YouTube. So, do you guys have any tips on running an open table game? What kind of game runs is best? West Marches, Dungeon Crawl, novella type games. Really, just any information that would be fantastic. I have to run all these because my schedule is so hectic. Thanks. Let me get to that in a moment, man. It's on the hour. So if you guys are new to the channel, I'm going to remind you at this point, do hit that follow button. Do join us in our adventure today. We're here for just another hour or so talking about D&D. Get your questions in. Feel free to ask anything at all. Don't be afraid. If you think it's a stupid question, somebody else in chat is probably thinking it or has thought it at some point or another. So go ahead and ask it. We're happy to answer anything that we can. We're here 5 nights a week, 10 shows a week, 150 hours of D&D every single month. We do a 24-hour D&D stream every month. That was our 10th one yesterday. We're coming off the back of that now. So do join us if you feel so inclined to do so, and enter into our giveaways below as well. Let's see then. I had a question before, and there we go. Open table games from Minolt. What kind of game runs this the best? West Marches. I would say a West March style of game would work pretty well for that. I've run a bunch of different one-shot games, and in a West Marches style, they tend to work pretty well. What's your experience of that, Skag?
Open table game. What do you mean by that then?
I think he means like anyone can just come along each week and play.
Random players.
Because he's got a hectic schedule, he can't like get a night every night.
I like a drop-in kind of session.
Drop-in sort of session, yeah.
Yeah, I would say either a game that you know very well, so you can explain the rules very easily, a game with very few rules or very easy rules. Because that is often the problems new people have. How do I actually do this game or something like that? Have pre-made characters that you can give players. That often helps out. Easy play system, I would say.
Yeah, an easy
A
play
rule
system.
system.
Dungeon World would work well for one shots. It's pretty easy system to learn. But like Sky was saying, pre-gens are huge if you're running an open table and you just say, bam, 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 here's who you're playing, or like pick out who you want to play out of this set of characters, because we don't have time to do 2 hours of character generation. You know, we've got to get a game going, we've got to run it.
Yeah.
So let's take these pre-gens and let's run with them. That would work well. The West March is the only one that I have real experience with running open tables. Every Thursday, I run a West Marches kind of open table game where you can come along and play with us. So those are one shots with no real consequences. They're just fun games that we put together on the fly, really. But that works quite well. Not new. I've been playing 15 years. D&D5 just have performance anxiety. Well, that's understandable, man. I mean, every time we've got to get up on stage is scary. That's perfectly understandable. There are a lot of very famous and incredible actors who have ridiculous nerves when it comes to actually getting onto a stage. So it's perfectly understandable. Thanks so much to Cam Meow for following. Welcome, my friend, to the adventure. You are a gentle owl and a scholar. Thanks for joining us, buddy. Let's get through these questions. We've got so many to get through. I can't read all these stuff that you guys are reading here, but I will get to the questions. What if I don't have any more to play with? Should I try Roll20? Yeah, try Roll20.net. Try the Reddit looking for game for forums. There's also on the right-hand side of the Reddit looking for game. There's also a list of different websites that do it as well. I have not verified and tried them, but apparently they're okay. Roll20 is the best one that I found in the past.
But be sure that there will be hits and misses. So
exactly.
Be specific what you want to do if you're looking for groups, and really specify what is game that you want to play or want to DM. To kind of pry off the players that you don't want to have with you.
Yeah, exactly. So anything to add on that one, Jay? You want any open tables?
An experience?
Yeah, I mean, dabbling with the West Marches, it seems like a good way to go, to have people with different schedules and different priorities. And as far as like finding a group, I've been looking at meetup.com recently. There's a couple groups over about 60 miles away. I mean, I live in the middle of the woods, so everything's 60 plus miles away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they got like 250 members apparently.
That's interesting.
Bunch of different games going.
Yeah, that's cool.
You can check for certain communities that are like D&D communities in certain, I don't know, cities and what have you. Some of them have kind of meet-up style, so you can come into a certain store or something and sit down and play with specified DMs that have these open games. So.
Yeah, for instance, Cord is running a table in his game store at the moment where people can drop in and play. So there's game stores, there's loads of ways to find different players. Either online, go to your nerd store. People put up flyers still. That's still a thing. You could ask the person running there. They'll know. I went to a nerd store the other day in Savannah here in Georgia, and they had like 3 different groups playing, not just D&D, but there were some other tabletop RPGs and stuff. And the cool thing is, we went to the bar next door, which is called the Chromatic Dragon, and we took a photo there, and we're like, oh, look, it's like this nerd store, D&D pub and bar. I put it up on Twitter, and a girl who works there follows me on Twitter, and she said to me like, "Oh wow, you were there the other day?" And I was like, "Yeah, fuck." It was really cool. So I felt a little famous, for like my nerd donger was like, "Oh god," like went to a place and real people knew who I was. She wasn't working there that night, but there you go.
The power of Twitter.
Enough of my circle jerking. So let's go to more questions. Tips for developing the villain's characters leading up to a confrontation. How to introduce them to the PCs without getting them killed prematurely, nor just showing up right at the end as nameless baddies. Good question, Moxie Fruverous. You knew him, Moxie. I do not remember that name, but it's good to have that question in. Of course, can answer. I'm always here, dude. Straight back at him. So having them introduced early on as not necessarily a villain is a way to doing that. They were once the party's associate friend. They don't know that they're the big bad evil guy at the beginning. That's a way to do it. I've had that done well in the past. I think where I introduced a character who they don't know is the villain, and then turns out to be a bad guy towards the end. That way they've got a long list of experience as to who that person is in their character, without actually attacking them and murdering them immediately. Have a few ways of them to, like, you know, escape conveniently, or like they just don't find them, so they can't just be straight up murdered. You know, have, you know, think of the encounters when they're gonna meet the PCs. If that is going to be in some kind of probably avoid some kind of combat encounter for the most part. But if they are going to meet them in some situation, think of ways that they might be able to get out of that situation without being like, they just disappear and are gone, because that can feel cheap for the players, right? So, you know, think of some ways in which you could see them avoiding inevitable death when they meet the party. But I think not meeting them till the end can be a very powerful thing as well. So there's this kind of saying in horror, or like this kind of tradition in horror, perpetrated by like the likes of H.P. Lovecraft, where you never see the bad guy until the end. You never see the terrible, horrible monster until it sees you, until you are, you know, finally cornered by this thing. Good night, Morg. Thanks for dropping by, dude. And so if there is this really big, scary villain, sometimes you can get to know that person through their actions in the world. So they've sent out bands of undead to do their work, and so you then interrogate the undead skeleton with your raise dead spell, speak dead spell, and you can speak to him, and you can learn all about this horrible lich is doing all these things. But you don't immediately confront the lich, because once you see the horror, the evil, the power of the imagination and the power of the unknown is so much stronger than the power of knowing, right? The once you can see something, you can see in front of you, you know it's a bad thing, and you can kill it, right? But if you can't quite get your hands on this thing, if you can never quite get anything but a glimpse of this bad guy, or just whispers of things that he's done, and just you always come too late to the scenes of his crimes and like massacres and stuff like that, then it can be really exciting for the players when they finally get to meet him, and they finally get that confrontation that they've been looking for with this person, and they finally get to look upon the face of evil, because if you give them these interesting descriptions from different sources as to what this person looks like or to what this creature is, then you can paint a really like vivid and bizarre creature in the player's minds. And then when they see it, maybe it's not actually this horrible gibbering thing which everyone said it's supposed to be. It's actually something, you know, slightly less benign and evil.
A small little cutie rabbit.
It's actually just a squirrel all along. But yeah, it's one of those things where like the power of your unknown, your mind will create things. You know, if you think about have you ever been alone at night and you hear a sound in your house and you start thinking of all the horrible things it could be that are going to come and kill you? You know, it's a murderer that's going to bust in with a mask on his face and stab you all up. You know, everyone's had those kind of thoughts. But whereas if you know that there is nothing there, obviously that's not scary. But if you know that there is something out to get you, for instance, but you can't quite see what that thing is, and that's far scarier than knowing that there is like a man chasing you in D&D, for instance. So knowing that you're being chased by a dude is far less scary than not knowing what shadow is onto your trail, and just knowing that you are being hunted, and that kind of fear aspect is something that you could work into your game there, perhaps.
Yeah, and watch different, I mean, get inspiration from films, games, and whatever.
Yeah.
How did they solve it? I had one adventure where the players had like this soothsayer, told stories and what have you, followed the party, and he said, yeah, the villain that you are after looks like this, he lives over there. Whole adventures coming there, and in the end the plot twist was that the soothsayer was the bad guy trying to get the players to kill just a normal king dude, and which they did. You can kind of twist and turn everything around and just make the villains so much harder for them to really reach, or
Yeah.
make the villains really powerful from the start so that the players know,
That's
we
yeah.
can't really attack him. We need to find ways to do it. And another sidestep.
That's another way you can do it. I think Punk Gamer was saying in chat, she tends to scale her villains like much higher level than the parties at the beginning. Because then, you know, like when they do, if they do get into a confrontation with them, they get plastered, they get absolutely destroyed. And then they have to know that they come back later on when they're more powerful. They have to find other ways other than just combat to defeat this creature. Have you got any thoughts on that yourself, Jay?
Yeah, a few months ago we had some players that did a crossover event, and before that, what I did is I started them with just a simple quest: go through the sewers and recover a lost trinket. And the old elf guy, you know, he's completely powerless, just an older gentleman, you know, and he pleaded with the PCs, you know, please, you know, go get this for me. I'll give you all the money I have. It's not much. And then after they left town, he started subjugating the entire population, because with that trinket, he was a badass.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so I use their emotions by kind of making them feel bad, you know, describing, you know, some of the things he's doing to these people, and just like kind of hinting that, you know, this is your fault. You helped him do this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so then they wanted to turn around and go defeat him and stop the tyranny.
Yeah, actually, Skaggs one about them. This bad guy getting him to kill a king is exactly what I did, or a very similar thing to what I did with a
So
Game
you're
of
stealing
Thrones.
my ideas,
I took Skaggs' idea straight away. Yeah. No, we were playing a game in the Song of Ice and Fire role-playing system in a Game of Thrones. The players were characters from the north, and they were told that there was like an Ironborn invasion coming in, and this villain who was the bad guy, who was also a very kind of powerful individual and a noble. He convinced the party that there was an Ironborn invasion coming in, and there's going to be an attacking force, and so they needed to gather all of the rulers of the north into one kind of moot at Winterfell in order to get a discussion going to, you know, mobilize the forces of the north, basically. And then they went around to all these different places, different adventures along the way. They got them all together. At the very end, turns out this guy, this politician who had told them to do all this, a very influential and trustworthy man by all accounts. It turns out that he's actually trying to get all these people in one place so he can assassinate them all at the same time. And so they've done his work by getting them all to one place. Which was, they were like, no, as some of their favorite characters died. So that was good fun. Turn it out against the party and make their own actions down them.
Now you can make the villains much more harder to beat if there is an incentive for the players not to do it. I had this villain, really hard to get to the villain, but when the players actually did it, he had this long way where he kind of had made small voodoo dolls of the players. So he swooped up a voodoo doll and said, if you attack me, one of you will die. You know, don't know who, but one of you will die. So that will prolong the end fight until they actually managed to find ways to disenchant his voodoo dolls. So there are actually ways to prolong fights or make the players realize that this fight we cannot win at this point. We need to recap, reorganize, and learn more about the fight to actually win.
Yeah.
If the bad guy, you know, he realizes the same, you know, teleport out. Don't stay and just die.
Yeah, he has an idea too. I mean, if he can get the upper hand for the players, he will do it.
Yeah. Moxie says, great perspective, you guys. Thanks, I've definitely used the villain posing as ally before, but it has to be used sparingly. Yeah, for sure, definitely.
Yeah, it's a one-time deal often.
Yeah, I did the Red Wedding. I did the Red Wedding better. We didn't, obviously, we were in an alternative timeline, but we did our own Red Wedding, which was far less soft, like it was in the series and the books, and we did it properly, the way that it should, with James's character having to put down, end the life of his pregnant wife. That was pretty brutal scene right there. It was absolutely awful. But it was at the same time much better than just letting what's her face, Rosalind getting killed. So that was more fun. You know, when you make the players kill their loved ones, that's when you're winning, I think. As a dungeon master, that's when you.
But you should have like a whole hour talking about cool adventures that we've done and cool plots.
Exactly. Yeah. What
Plot
other
hour.
questions do you guys have? We had a bunch before. I'll go see if we've missed any. If we did miss any, just shout it out at us again, and be sure to just make us pay attention, and we'll go ahead and read them. But yeah, Moxie, you're welcome to any advice, dude. If you're, of course, new, I do encourage you to follow us for more advice and stuff like that. We're always here to answer your questions. So you can be sure to just join us along here if you're interested in doing that. The best villains are the ones the party makes on their own. NPCs who are just rude. Yeah, they're usually
Yes.
the true villains of any piece.
Yeah.
The
other players.
Go ahead.
No, the other players could be good villains too.
Yeah. Oh, I've had had points where they one person reveals themselves to be evil and they can be the arch villain at the end. You know, that's been fun before. Obviously they have to be on board of that and you have to have planned that a bit before. Uncas had a question I missed out. I'm going to start DMing. So any do's and don'ts to make me stand out as a DM who cares? Oh, okay, interesting, Uncas. Well, that's good.
I would say like some regional clothing, maybe a crown.
That
a
is
good
always
cape,
good.
a spear or something.
A crown is always useful. Welcoming them with bread and salt into your house. But yeah, if you are trying to come up as a DM who cares, then the fact that you have asked this question and want some advice, it shows to me that you care. But to show your players, what things that I always think is good for a DM is they are always asking questions. They're always engaged. They're always interested. They are make themselves available. Even when it's not like necessarily that convenient for them to do so. They're around to answer questions. They're happy to help new players. And they are open to suggestions. So I'd say, keep an open mind, help your players as much as possible. If you've got a new player, put as much work into helping them as possible as well. And
be open, I would say. Be open about this is what I want to portray with my game, with what I want to do. And this is what I expect from you players. I think that is a key that a lot of DMs doesn't really care, and I think it's really important. I want to ask you as a player, this is what I expect of you. I want you to role play a lot. I want you to forget about the dices in the biggest regard. We roll on the different skill checks, sure, but we role play a lot. Here is my kind of thing, and Moxie Fruvius. Thank you for following.
Moxie Fruvus, welcome to the adventure. You're a gentle Moxie. Alex Scholar, thank you for joining us today, my friend.
So I think it's a good key point is to be open, both for yourself and for the players, to actually show them what the session will be all about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do's and any don'ts for you, Jay?
Don't specifically. Don't say no. A lot of people just want to try stuff, even if it's some weird, wacky, convoluted scheme. Make the difficulty check 25, and if they hit it, then they're superheroes, and if they don't, well, they got their chance to try, and that's what they want to do.
As a general rule, and this is something that actors use in improvisational like sketches and stuff. When you're doing any form of improv, as you are constantly doing when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, whether or not you kind of notice it or not, you're improvising. And so when a player gives you a suggestion or can I do X, a way to think about it is yes and or yes but. And so always try and roll with them. And this is something like so far ridiculously out that you think it just couldn't work whatsoever. There's always a point where you can just say no. But a good kind of starting point to think of when you're getting into thinking about trying to improvise and what your players want. A yes and kind of system. So I say, I want to try and jump off this chandelier and land on the bad guy. And think, yes, and this chandelier is made out of glass, so it might just like topple down when that happens. You can add that in to your own thoughts. Or yes, but it's a very long jump, and so it's going to be a tough way of doing that. So it's going to be a really big leap over. So you're going to put all your effort into it. So different ways of making the propositions, I suppose, that your players give to you more than just a yes or no.
Yeah, and I think when we are talking about DMing and things that we don't like and how you can help that out, there have been couple of times when the players are choosing really bad names for the characters, and I really hate it. Like these Star
Bob
Wars
the
campaign,
First,
whatever, and they're calling them Han Solo or something like that.
Oh, man.
Instead of really giving them some really bad shit about that, you could say like, okay, I know that you're not the best of creative about the names, but I want the names to be kind of cool, kind of into the game
Based
and
in the
very
lore.
yeah. So here is where you could actually randomize them, and I will help you on the way. I will try to be there for you when you do it, or I could even do one for you or a couple of them so you know what I'm after. So try to, instead of just going, this is shit, I don't want to do it, redo it, give them some help, some pointers, show them where they could actually go and improve what they're doing wrong, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else to add on to that, Jay? I think we're gonna go allow on now the do's and don'ts.
Nat ones make the most fun.
Yeah, but I guess in general, be as helpful a person as you can possibly be. Be open to suggestions, and wants them to have fun. Basically, is all you need. Yeah, try and make sure they're having as much fun as possible, and then you're doing your job. Saying it's crazy ideas makes the best memories. Yeah, I not in real life all the time. There's been some memories which aren't the best ones, but certainly in D&D, where there are little consequences because you're living in a fancy world, then go ahead and take that crazy druid herb. That time a player romances an NPC. A few nat 20s later, he marries her. She turns out to be the silver dragon living amongst humans. It was amazing. Nice. Oh man, we usually get a question about romance. We could talk a little bit about romance in D&D and other encounters. How do you tend to handle like romantic encounters yourself, Skag, when you're running games?
It's a lot of depending on the group, I would say. I have certain groups that are like, I don't want to have the romance part in our games, and I respect that. I mean, it's a part of the role play too. And there have been a couple of other groups that have been more interested in taking, oh, my character is this suave, cool, charming character, always hitting on everybody. I have done so with a character not so long ago. And I mean, if they want to do it, and me as a GM feel it's okay. I mean, I put the box here. I want to play. So go for what you feel is right for yourself. Don't you want to do this part? You can be upfront about it, I would say.
Yeah. For us, there's an article I've linked there, which is called "Love Without Eroticism," which is one of Mitch's articles. And he basically says in there, you want romantic relationships with a character to not detract from the rest of the players. So you don't want it to be the Sir John and Lady Marjorie show. You don't want it to be like just about that relationship, because that gets kind of brings a spotlight off from the other players when they might want to be doing other things. So you don't want it to detract from the story of the game, which of course, obviously the main idea is to have some kind of adventure or some kind of interesting quest happen. And the way to do that is to make that NPC that romantic attachment somehow related to the adventure. They need to be useful to the party other than just as like a romantic engagement. So an example of one of this in one of our games that we played before in this Game of Thrones world that we talk about occasionally is that Josh's character, he had pre-existing relationship. And this is the first point here, actually. So ask your players about family members as well as past or present love interests. So it's important to kind of establish these before you get into the game. So I knew before the game that Josh's character previously had a girlfriend, and they had like broken apart for whatever reasons, which became apparent in the story. But they had broken apart. So when they met up in the game and when we ran into her, he was like, "Oh God, it's my ex," running into your ex, the worst thing possible, right? But then it turns out they end up having this relationship, but she was also part of this, like thief's gang. And so she just so happened to be the only person that could get them inside this place, this like vault that they're trying to get into. And so, making that romantic interest not just about the romance, but also about a story is pretty important as well, because then it adds that extra kind of level of meaning to it, I suppose. Like, why am I talking to this person? Because if while we're having this 30-minute scene of this person, if all they're doing is just flirting, like there's never a point to that for the rest of the party. But if it so happens that this flirting might end up getting them into inside of this vault, then sure, certainly this is a good scene to be having, right? And then the other one is the kind of hat on door, or like a tie on door, sock on door, whatever you want to say, method when it comes to like sex and romance and stuff like that in D&D games, because no one really finds that comfortable. Everyone finds it uncomfortable, right? So all you need to do is just do a quick fade to black. No one else needs to know what happens. There needs to be no real other conversation about that, because it's romantic relationships and sex is like a part of life, and it's perfectly reasonable if you want it to be a part of your game as a DM, and perfectly reasonable if you don't want it to be a part of your game as well. So the hat on door is certainly a fade to black kind of moment, which is I think 99% of groups really tend to run with, because no one I've met actually wants to go into that nitty-gritty. Obviously, Twitch chat is different. You guys would be more than happy to go into these scenes with us, I'm sure. One-on-one sessions on the live Jasmine stream. Rolls in with the Robin Coffee epic. The good example of romance in D&D, and I have a highlight video on this. And shit, we just hit 1,500 subscribers on YouTube last week. I've got a cool little video to show you guys to link in chat, which is Romance in D&D, Miles and Diligence. It's a really good scene between Gareth's character and Lee's character, two PCs who are in love in this game in a romantic relationship. So go ahead and drop those. Have a look at that at some point if you're interested in an example of that done really well, I think, and done without it being really awkward for everyone, because often these things can get sort of weird, and then there's that line for different players where they're like, okay, I'm not really comfortable in role playing this scene out fully. Let's just end there, and that's perfectly fine. But yeah, I like that Love About Eroticism article, because I think it basically says everything that I think as well.
But I think it kind of ties down yet again with almost everything. It's know about your players. If you know that they are capable of delivering this scene and it will be good, then you can leave it to them to do so. If you know that there is kind of some discomfort, leave it out. It's not that important often. So it's all down to know your players, and if you don't, get to know them before you kind of give them stuff like that at times.
Yeah. It's just sent me an image. That's real good. Super Meta Punch says D&D After Dark. There we go. How do you feel about like romance in your games, Jay? Do you use it a lot? Is it on much, or?
It's pretty rare, and usually when it does happen, whether it's between PCs or PCs and NPCs, it usually becomes just a humorous situation. Lots of over-exaggerated flirting, and lots of cliches and laughs and stuff. So it's never a serious thing in my groups.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of groups go as well. Fall into that kind of like, we're having a good time, because most people aren't taking. Not at most groups, I think, like take that stuff like really seriously, because it's a why am I being blamed? What am I being blamed for?
Yeah, I don't know. I just follow the masses.
Is there actually a problem? Because if there's a problem with, then you guys can let me know. but yeah, I've completely forgot my chat now. I was too busy being blamed, guys. Look what we've done now. Look what we've done now. Oh yeah. Oh, that's why I play Lilith. Yeah, I play Lilith. Lee plays Diligence. Confusion there. But yeah, romance is just a thing where I think you can take it however seriously or not seriously as you so desire. Desire being the words
Keyword.
in that one. But yeah, it's something that you can have a conversation about before the session. That's something that I usually talk to groups about at session 0 is how comfortable or uncomfortable are we with talking about certain topics. I was talking to a new group the other week about a super secret project which we're working on, which I haven't even told the mod squad about yet. I don't think anyone knows other than me and Sydney at this point. It's a super secret sexy project.
How could that be if only you and Sydney knows when you have talked to others about it?
Silence. Not even the players involved know about the super secret project. It's only me and Sydney. But we're talking to them, and we had this conversation about what kind of levels of romance we find with, what kind of levels of like violence and gore we find with, and you find with different groups it ends up being different things. So yeah. Let me tweet someone real quick.
Yeah, and I mean, if there is a person that is more, how should we say it? Their concept is more for it. I mean, like a charming bard or whatever. If you want to, you could actually ask that player beforehand how far do you want to proceed that part of role play, so you know beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. And setting those expectations is something that we always talked about as being pretty important for groups. To establish with your group, whether you're a DM or a player, if you're a player as well, letting people know how Live Jasmine project, guys, that's been running a long time. It's not Live Jasmine. We're branching out to other websites, other online chat webcam sites. But no, yeah, it's something as a player, you can feel free to say like, look, this is what I'm uncomfortable with. You can bring it forwards if it's not actually brought forth by the DM as well. Yeah, no chat for you and Lee. It was all for your decision, pretty much. Yeah, guys fought that one together.
Yeah, wasn't it like really simple? She would tell her love for him. Wasn't it kind of?
Yeah, she had to tell him his love.
Yeah.
Let one another know about how they felt about one another.
Yeah.
What's up, Kodos? How did you recover after the 24-hour stream? Not so well, dude. I slept for like 2 hours, and then we had this mother of all lightning storms like on in this town, and I've never seen a lightning storm like it. And like there's crackles of thunder and lightning and everything going by. I woke up in a few hours and I was up getting ready for this stream. And that's where I've been basically. I took a quick nap earlier, but yeah, I need to go and sleep after this one probably. Just for my health, just for my health and sanity. But any more questions from you guys? I'm happy to answer in this little Q&A session here. I'll let you guys know what's happening tomorrow whilst you're getting in your questions, typing them up fiercely here. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. EST is the Homebrew and Review show where you guys get to watch me and Tabletop Twitch, aka Aaron, creating homebrew races, classes, backgrounds, and monsters and all sorts of different things. Me and Aaron last week created the Battle Chef, which was a lot of fun. We'll be making a few edits to the Battle Chef class. And then we'll be creating a new class or maybe even a new race. So looking forward to that show at 1 p.m. EST. And then at 4 p.m., we're starting a brand new show in the Apocalypse World game. Josh is running it, and it's called Cemetery City, which is going to be pretty exciting. We've got a great cast in for that one. We've got a great crew, and I'm very excited to be getting into that session tomorrow. I'm playing a coked up drug dealer who runs a massive enterprise, and it's going to be a lot of fun, I think. So Coda says, I have a question. Will, how would you go about making a multi-class in 5th edition? I don't have too much experience with multiclass myself. It's actually fairly easy to do. If you're looking for actual rules on it, then it's in the player's handbook, like Moxie's saying there. All the rules for multi-classing. I'll give you a page reference. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a page reference to help you out. Even somebody see here. It should be under customization options. It's on page 163 of the player's handbook. Is customization options for players. So that's how you can do it, and it will give you all the rules there. If you're asking for like suggestions, then Rogue Monk could be cool. I always think mixing opposite classes is usually quite good fun. So like a wizard fighter could be interesting. How on earth would that
Barbarian
work?
thief. I mean, Conan.
Barbarian thief would be funny. All these like a bard necromancer. I always think would be a funny one to try. I always think that would probably be like a puppet master. If I ever did like a bard necromancer, it'd be like some kind of puppet master. Think of something creative and something different. Multi-classing is a great way to get around the kind of monotonous limitations put upon us by without enough content for 5th edition. Elliot says also Flight of Bros uses unarmed strike. Sneak attack requires a finesse weapon. You could look on the rules there, guys, and you can look it all up. There's probably not too much point going into all the exact rules here in chat because it's not really the best place to do it. But the Discord is good for that. If you haven't joined our Discord, you can go and chat mechanics with folks that are happy to help you out there.
And if it's a specific question regarding a specific rule, I mean, it's easy to just type it in Google and everybody's kind of sharing in different forums.
That's usually the answer for me. It's different forums. But yeah, because whilst we're on stream, getting into specific rules is a little bit more difficult. We don't want to spend 5 minutes looking up page references for you guys and reading rules and stuff.
And certain rules are kind of complicated too. I mean, this states that you get 1 bonus attack. Does that means if you have 2 weapons? Type it in Google and it kind of is shattered everywhere.
Exactly. Richard said, how do you guys manage the creation of the main enemy NPCs and their classes? I use monsters from the monster manual. So I think of a monster which I'm going to have as the villain. I'm going to find an appropriate monster stat block in the monster manual, or if I can't find one, I will reskin one to my liking. So I'll find one which is vaguely appropriate, and I'll say, okay, he's no longer a Death Knight. He is now, some of a creature which I'm going looking to directly. So every time Will links Discord and says they'll answer it, I feel like he is Sev. Give this man an answer. Go ahead and do in the Discord. I'm not going to look up specific rules here.
There will be answers over there.
Someone said, someone asked a question yesterday, do I consider myself a professional DM? And no, because thank God, if I ever consider myself a professional DM, I'd have to answer rules questions all the time. And it's something I'm not prepared to do ever. So,
and you need to have them on point every time.
Every time.
As per section 2, page 445, there is stated.
I just print the monster manual and the player's handbook out into an FAQ section for people. Oh man. I hoard homebrew monsters. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the homebrews, and I'm a big fan of reskinning. You guys always hear me talking about reskinning different monsters, so big fan of doing that to add some variety to otherwise, familiar monsters, I suppose, and drawing inspiration from different writing sources. I've been reading a lot of H.P. Lovecraft recently. I just finished The Shadow over Innsmouth. Was a great read. I've read over here.
A lot of good books.
Yeah, and it's my table. I rule it this way. Exactly. Hashtag not at my table. The rules. And
you can take an idea and make like a own class from it. If you're talking D&D, I mean, if I wanted a character that has some things from the necromancy tables and I don't know, like the elemental tables, whatever, I just mash it up and say that he found a book, whatever, doesn't really care. I want him this way. So don't be staring the exact rules each time. Then it won't be kind of too static for my taste.
Yeah, a bit too static. Moxie, I'll ask, send this one over to Jay. I've heard DMs certainly spend an hour of prep per hour of gameplay. I spend way more time than that and still feel unprepared. Is this normal, or do I just need more experience?
How
Yeah,
much prep time do you spend, Jay?
I spend about 1 hour per hour of work session, but I've also gotten into playing with the battle maps and tokens and stuff recently and having a lot of fun with that. So that takes
extra
time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, experience is some of it. Learning what you need to prepare for. Like I'm a world builder type. I like to create towns and all these vast landscapes. And my current group, they just want to go kill everything. They don't care about the scenery. Yeah. So any kind of effort I put into building out a town and making it more interesting is always lost on them. So you finding out what things to prepare is part of your experience. And then if you find your players aren't always going the way you want them to go and they're not hooking into your plot, just create a couple of tables of things to do, something to draw their interest.
Yeah. If you feel like you're doing way too much prep, just what I say is try giving yourself a deadline to do it. So if you usually take 4 hours to prep, give yourself 2 hours to do it and make yourself do all the work within that time and see if you can sit down and focus and do the work that you need to do. You're probably over preparing. You're probably doing too much prep for what you're doing. But it is true that the fact that the more that you DM, the more comfortable you're feeling. The more comfortable you'll feel in not prepping for everything. So probably if you're a new player, you end up prepping a lot more than you really need to. And then as you're more experienced, you get the feel of pacing where you know that you don't actually need to prep for all these things. But yeah, I mean, Matthew Mercer spending 8 hours a week for a 4-hour show. That's a very different, completely different situation than the one that the average DM is looking at, because you're not being paid to do lists as a DM. You're not on a show where thousands of people are watching.
There is kind of a strange way of kind of comparing with Matthew Mercer and his Critical Role. I mean, they put so much other stuff in it. Here I want this part to be kind of spoken out, and he kind of goes for more of a bigger, broader spectrum than just the play itself. He wants this to happen and this to be revealed and whatever, for the stream's sake. So it's another kind of set.
Yeah.
But I would say that you learn how to prep as you go along. I have noticed that if I have this Roll20 thing going on, I kind of, these maps are cool. I bunch them up, I put them up, and maybe I put like an half hour just prepping maps. I don't know if I'm going to use them all. I just prep them up, and later on I go back and, I have a lot of maps to choose from, whatever. So maybe you find your new, other ways to do it, how to prep and what kind of goes so good flow for you.
Yeah, as a DM, you're constantly working on deadlines and schedules. Never spend 8 hours prepping. Like, you'll never get anything done in your life. You know what I mean? Like, you're fascinated over prep, but reality, you don't need that long to actually do things and to prep things. And if you have 8 hours in your life every week to prepare a session, maybe you can do that. But don't know what you're doing for a session. How long is your session lasting that you need to prep for 8 hours? I think it's probably ridiculous for any normal person in a normal situation to be doing. That's great if you want to do that, but at the same time, I think don't do that would be my advice. My advice would be to cut down on prep time as much as you can until you're at a point where you're feeling comfortable doing it. And a lot of beginners fall into that trap where they see someone, like, you'll see someone who's really good at something, or like an expert at something, or professional, and you'll see the way that they do it, and you'll think that is the way to do it. And what we always said, the thing I said at the beginning of the show is, challenge our opinions, challenge everything that we say, and anyone who you see saying things. So, for instance, if you're getting advice from different places, then you got to constantly question, like, is that the right advice for me? Because whilst one person might do something, they're in a completely different kind of GM than you are. You know, they're a different kind of person in a different game with different players than you are. And so, you know, maybe 30 minutes of prep is all you need. Maybe you need to take a few hours. Maybe you're just, you know, 1 hour per game kind of guy. Maybe you take a little bit longer, and that's fine as well. But, you know, never set yourself up at the same level as someone else. I'd say never attempt to like imitate what someone else is doing, because it probably won't work for you, you know. And you'll probably find out that doing that, you'll find a style in which you yourself are comfortable in. And that's when you know, like, you're finally comfortable is actually DMing and prepping, is when you've tried a few different things and you found your own space. You know, you're trying to be your own DM, and you're not trying to, you know, don't feel like you have to set yourself for the same like hours of work which other people do into this, because, you know, you'd be mad if you ended up trying to do different, trying to, you know, put 8 hours in, for instance, or, you know, 20, or do a 24-hour stream every month, or, you know, play 24 hours of D&D or 150 hours every month. Like, you'd be silly if you did that. And completely different DM from Mercer. I mean, I don't watch him, so I can't really say, but more free than Mercer. Yeah, it's because I'm in America now, man. Yeah, definitely borrow his idea from different DMs. Yeah, for sure. That's the thing, isn't it? Like, the ultimate goal of that you want is that you find your own style, is that you find your own thing, your own space where you're comfortable DMing. And you know, eventually, what I want is for you guys to not have any questions here. You know, is to not be for you guys to fuck off, man. For you guys to, you know, feel comfortable enough where you don't need to worry too much about all this stuff. Thanks so much to CW21 for following. Welcome, Clear Venture. You are a gentleman and a scholar.
There it is.
Yeah, Matt Cole was also very good. I need to talk to Matt, actually, because I saw him streaming the other day. Yeah, Chris Perkins fan, of course, big fan of the Perkinator.
But I think it's something to do with everything. Take everything with a pinch of salt or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is what I like, and that portion of their ideas are really good. I will take that into consideration. So don't get, yeah, he said 8 hours. I'm gonna do 8 hours. Make it your own. I mean, as Will said, does it work with like 30 minutes? It works with 30 minutes. My way of working maybe doesn't really work for you. I work in a specific way every time, and it's been really good for me. But I mean, for another person, it kind of feels strange, I guess. So make it your own.
I think it's not, isn't it? Watching, yeah, there's no best DM. I was about to talk about that, Hitch, actually, because like the only like I think watching DMs is interesting, because I watch a bunch of different D&D streams. I hop into, you know, most people who stream around here, you know, a few times a week I'll watch other people, and there are some people I really like, enjoy watching and stuff. More so than others and stuff, because they're in different styles of games and stuff like that. But really, like, the only person who is like the best DM is like your DM, hopefully, you know, like because he is the one running your games, you know, or it's you if you're running the game, you know, you're the best DM, let you know, because you're creating the game for your players. And, you know, there's a lot to be said that I couldn't create a game for, you know, any play style. You know, I couldn't necessarily be the best DM. If you guys are looking for a really crunchy game, I wouldn't be a very good DM at doing that. And, you know, maybe if Mercer was trying to do this more freestyle kind of style stuff that we do, maybe he wouldn't be as good as that as well. So I think there's a lot to be said for you guys not worrying too much about being the best or anything like that. You guys are all like super good at what you do. And so despite the fact that there are, you know, people who do this professionally, or they're, you know, people who are hired by Wizard of the Coast and stuff like that, you guys are all you know, very, very good at what you guys do, and you shouldn't feel like you're, you know, you're any worse or any lesser than anyone who does this.
And pick up what you like and how you do. I mean, Encounter Roleplay, a lot of things that are happening within is improv. A lot of things are improv. Yeah. I mean, viewers' decisions, a lot of that things are really improv. How can we take this moment and just run with it? How can we make this action actually work? So that's improv, and it's really good. I mean, and if we're looking for Mercer, if you're having that as an example, he has a very specific pattern he goes through, and it works really good with what he does. So find your way is my end of thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You know, find your own voice and just get out and play every week. It'll come as you go.
Exactly. Morgan says, I feel like as a DM, you create a world, not a story. The characters interacting with the world is what creates the story. But like a lot of beginning DMs, spend ages writing this amazing intricate story only for the players to go off on a random tangent and stop it for it become overbearing. Yeah, that's certainly a thing. Like you'll write this really intricate plot and it'll just go completely off the rails from it, and then you're like, oh god, what do I do? Yeah, that's certainly a thing that you can end up getting, drawn into. It's like, oh god, what happens when they don't do what I expect them to do? That's certainly a common beginner pitfall. But we've got to head out here in a moment. We've actually been streaming for 6 hours today after 24-hour stream, and you guys know how tired I get after 24-hour streams. The amount of drinking that we did on that and trying to be interesting for 24 hours is not easy. Bard College, how long have you been running games every day of the week? You've been playing for a year and a month now, I think. But I've only been doing this crazy schedule for like 2 or 3 months at this point. Before I was like 3 nights a week. So yeah, I'm now doing this full time. I've been doing this for about 3 months now, I'd say. Maybe a little less, maybe 2. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. But we've been doing the 24-hour streams every month now for 10. Yeah, if you guys are new, if you enjoyed today's Q&A session, if you had a good time, and do hit that follow button and join us. Can't stress enough how much it means to us when you do follow us, because it means you can catch all of our streams. Like I said, we're streaming all the time.
Every time.
Every night, almost 5 nights a week, and a bunch of different games from Numenera, Apocalypse World, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. And so be sure to join us if you haven't already. Be sure to enter into like giveaway for the D&D5E starter set, as well as the player's handbook. So get your hands on those copies. There's only a few days left for that player's handbook, actually. So be sure to enter into it before it's too late. And of course, be sure to tune into our next show tomorrow, starting at 1 p.m. EST. Homebrew and Review will be making our own races, classes, background stories, and all sorts of different things happening there. So join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. EST, and then at 4 p.m. for another show, a new show, Apocalypse World, called Cemetery City. So we'll see you guys very soon. Thanks to Jay Snide for coming on the show. Jay, what do you think? Were we at all helpful?
Oh yeah, I got some great stuff. I'm gonna watch the VOD again right after this probably. Notes. But yeah, I definitely got some great ideas on how to make my NPCs more interesting, more real.
Good. And Skagif, any last words from you, my friend?
Yeah, I would say that if you're gonna watch the VOD back again, I would recommend that you kind of mute Will out and you get all the good pieces coming from me. Now, good luck for you, man. Hopefully you will have a good time and hopefully get some good tidbits out of it.
Yeah, thanks.
And myself, I've been linked in the chat doing some streams here and there. Next week I will do my 3rd episode in my dark horror theme.
Sexy. So go check out Skagif's channel, and thanks again, Skagif, for helping us out here running production. Hope you guys enjoyed Weird Wild West earlier on, the 2nd session of that at the same time. Next week I'll be joining them in that game, in that one shot. And then same time next week we'll be doing another Dungeon Master lesson. So sign up for this show for next week if you want to be in the hot seat where Jay is learning a little bit. Then come along and do join us for that. But until next time, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you again to Monkey Fluff, to Irish Jake, and to someone else who I've name has forgotten, the Frog. Of course, I got to fit the Frog. 1, 2, 3 for donating earlier. You guys are all gentlefolk and scholars. Until next time, guys, we'll see you in the tavern, in the Discord chat, and until then, try not to roll too many nat ones because we're going to be laughing when you do. See you later, guys, and don't